Good morning. The Finance Committee meeting is starting at 10:02 a.m. today, and it is April 26th. All members are present, that being Alderwoman Finlayson on my right and Alderwoman Carmer O'Neill on my left. And also we are joined by Alderman Ross Arnett. First, could I entertain a motion to modify the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'll move approval of the agenda with one deletion, ID 9722, presentation Office of the Mayor.
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, could I entertain a motion for approval of the minutes for yesterday's meeting, that being April 25th, 2022?
Motion to approve yesterday's meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All righty. Yes,
Are you voting?
aye. The mic is not on.
It-
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Aye.
it's done.
Thank
It's done. All right, we don't have any fund transfers or supplemental appropriations today, so we're going to go right into the department presentations. And the first one is Human Resources. So Tricia, the way we've been doing this is just you can present uninterrupted, and then we'll ask questions from the committee, and then my colleagues can ask questions as well.
And so would you like detail as I go through the slides? Is that your interest, detail?
Whatever you're comfortable giving. We have two presentations today. We have 3 hours. We're hopeful that we'll get done well in advance. So what kind of time are you looking at for the?
If you don't have a lot of questions, I think we can get through this rather quickly.
Yeah.
But I'll go through my slides as I have them together here.
Yeah, show us your work. That's great.
All right. All right, so this is the Human Resources budget. I think it's best that I first explain what our roles are. A lot of our responsibilities are laid out in the charter and the code in terms of legal mandate, legal authority. But we have a pretty robust set of responsibilities in order to meet the needs of the employees, retirees, and any applicants for positions. So under the code and the charter, we're responsible for appointments and promotions, recruitment and retention, benefits and wellness, classification and compensation, so that's the pay plan, the job descriptions, et cetera, performance and training. We maintain both electronic and hard copy personnel records. We deal with separation and retirement and employee and labor relations. We provide staffing support and other kinds of support to the Civil Service Board, the Public Safety Disability Retirement Board, and the Human Relations Commission. We serve as a member of the city's union negotiating team. We are part of, the HR manager is part of the Police and Fire Retirement Plan Commission, and we participate in the Risk Management Policy Group when that's engaged. The Human Resources Division is clearly committed to actively recruiting highly qualified and diverse applicants, retaining and engaging employees by offering competitive and comprehensive benefits, providing ongoing education and learning opportunities, and ensuring that we have a safe and equitable work environment for all of our employees. So we have a modest team. We do quite a bit with 7 people. So we have a human resources manager, we have an HR administrator, a benefits administrator, a recruitment and employee relations administrator, we have an office manager, we have an associate, and we have an office associate 1. So you can see that we report to the city manager, and our primary, if we were to kind of consolidate everything into a small org chart here, we would have employee services, we do benefits and retirements, and then employee and labor relations. So our responsibilities associated with all that are also quite extensive. So we do recruitment, we support and sometimes initiate examinations. We provide lists of applicants to the appointing authorities for authorized city positions. We help guide them through that process as well. We administer entrance and promotional exams. Those are primarily in the public safety arena. Many of those promotional processes are controlled by collective bargaining agreements. The general order for police, for example, related to promotions is part of the labor agreement. So when I say we administer things, we absolutely navigate things through the collective bargaining process and enhancing, improving the language in there, as well as making sure we adhere to those constraints or expectations in collective bargaining, which is an important part to point out. We prepare lists of people who are eligible for hiring and promotion. And as you know, also under the city code, there's a commitment to promote our employees, and so we navigate that as well. And part of that navigation includes some of what we're trying to expand upon with the Public Works career ladder efforts, so that individuals that are competing for promotion are better prepared for that opportunity. So the development and maintenance of the city's classification and compensation plan is another element of our responsibilities. We do that with oversight from the Civil Service Board. So any change to job description, for example, I mean, obviously the work is done at the department and HR level so that there are representative descriptions of the work, and that any evaluation of the positions from a pay standpoint is done within the HR office. And presented to the Civil Service Board for any civil service position. If it is an exempt service position, that is the role and responsibility that HR holds and works in concert with the city manager to get good definitions for those positions. And of course, you know that any exempt service position has to be part of the exempt service section of the Article 3 of the Human Resources section of the code. We put a great deal of effort and purpose into developing and administering employee benefit programs for our employees and our retirees. That's medical, dental, vision, prescription drug, health savings accounts, FEBA, and OPEB. I think if you need any explanation of any of those, I'll stop and offer them. We have an employee assistance program. We have core and voluntary life insurance. We have short and long-term disability insurance. We use an absence management company to administer our family medical leave, as well as our extended absences of employees. We have deferred compensation. We have pension and retirement programs. We administer our police and fire retirement program. That is the responsibility of the HR department to handle the administration of that. And we are a member of the Maryland State Retirement System for the other employees that are eligible for that benefit. We have medical independent care, flexible spending accounts, fitness for duty. We have credit union. We have a robust leave program with annual sick and personal leave. We coordinate the performance management program for all city employees. So before a civil service employee is able to, or an exempt service employee for that matter, is able to receive a step increase, which is an annual increase up to the longevity steps, they must have a performance review that's satisfactory or better in order to advance. So that's an important accountability element. That's part of our program and our process. We also oversee the disciplinary program and the subsequent grievance and appeal processes. We make sure we follow the union and the civil service provisions. The Civil Service Board provisions for appeals are laid out in the city code, so that's a legal adherence as well. I assist the chief labor negotiator, which is the city manager, in the negotiation of collective bargaining agreements. We are sitting at the table now with all 4 of our bargaining units, and we're responsible for administering the fire, police, the trades, and the clerical union contracts. So throughout the year, part of the advice and guidance is around proper interpretation of the union agreements as well. I like to say, when you really are mature in this field, you know how to navigate a question that is not the question the person really meant to ask, but the question that they asked, but it's the question they really meant to ask. And so that you're always processing what's in the code, what's in the contract, what's been practiced, what's been precedent setting. You know, every time there's a question that comes up that may engage any of those elements, we make sure that we're thoroughly reviewing all those elements. And that can make the difference between whether somebody pursues a grievance and appeal or somebody gets their issue resolved ahead of that. And all they were asking for is a good, reasonable interpretation of what should have happened, and then an understanding of that some adjustment can be made, and we do that. So I need to say that out loud, because that's part of employee relations. You know, good labor relations first involves really attentive employee relations. Sorry, I just realized I slammed my leg. I think that was emphasis added. So we also coordinate and administer the retirement plans for civilian and public safety employees. This includes revision to the police and fire retirement plan document. A lot of times we get into those revisions to that plan document during collective bargaining, but throughout the course of the year, we may find that there's just some language or some benefit outcome that we didn't really anticipate in the way that the policy document is written. And so you know that that has to come before you as a body by resolution if we make any changes, because there used to be, within the code, all the language of the police and fire plan document was codified. And then in 2015, we removed it from the code, but adopted it by resolution. And so consequently, there's no way that we can make any changes to that document unless it's brought before you as a body. But we put a great deal of effort into what that is before it comes to you. So we also create and implement quality of life mandates. We have to follow federal law with regard to the Fair Labor Standards Act, family and medical leave, harassment policies, which are generally covered under federal employment law requirements. We have a substance abuse policy, but we also have federal regulations related to Drug-Free Workplace Act. We have Americans with Disabilities Act. We have privacy and equal employment opportunity constraints and concerns. All of those and more, including state law, are what we need to navigate whenever we make any policy changes or policy decisions with regard to implementing our policies. We also plan, coordinate, and deliver training to employees that we hope foster the administrative goals and objectives. This is something else I'm particularly focused on as a professional that's been in this field for, we'll just say, a lot of years. And because of that, I have learned over time that you cannot be an independent thinker around implementation of your policies and procedures. You need to think from a business impact standpoint as well, an operational impact as well. And so from that, I hope that we do a reasonably good job of making sure we're listening to and incorporating the needs of the departments when it comes to what will improve their employee relations, their operational decisions with regard to what training opportunities are offered. So, for example, you may have individuals that have gotten promoted. They didn't really have a lot of experience at a first-line supervisor level. So you make sure that you have training that addresses that as well. If you have experiences that show that there's some workplace behaviors that are kind of getting impacted, it's good to bring in a training focus that speaks to that as well. So in this past couple of years, honestly, with COVID, has been so incredibly challenging around the training field. It's been downright tough. We used to be able to bring employees together, go to Pip Moyer, do in-person training for our employees, and that has really suffered tremendously. What we have done is we've reached out to, and we've managed to, in response to some changes in our budget over time, in order to save money, in order to implement collective bargaining decisions of the past, we have tried to offer free online training. And so we know, and we're very proud of the fact that we were able to offer some training that was free through the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. And we put that out to employees. We certainly did our own design and creation around COVID training. You know, we did supervisory training, and we just pushed out a ton of information to employees to stay current with that throughout the year. So again, the administrative goals in those situations is just trying to adjust and pivot around those expectations. But you'll see later when we talk about actual budget numbers that this free offering online is not going to be forever. So we also implement and maintain the Human Resources Information System. For us, that's MUNIS. We work very closely with finance and the departments around that. We do personnel-related transactions. There isn't anything that a person gets in their paycheck that didn't first come through HR, generally speaking. We manage position controls. So I already have my list of the budget asks, and we'll go through and do our part in making sure that those are ready and prepared for any adoption. That may include going through before the Civil Service Board if it's a new title or a new job description or a change to a job description. As I already said, we provide applicant management module. What that means is that that suffered this year. Our MUNIS system, for some reason, the applicant tracking module just went kaflooey. And so we had to really turn right around and encourage people to apply with us directly. So we started communications and sending out hard copy job descriptions, hard copy job applications, and then try to manage that the old way for a while until things started working better with that system. That was a good part of this fiscal year, unfortunately. We also provide, as I already said, the staffing support to those boards and commissions. And the other, the Police and Fire Retirement Plan Commission, Rights Management Files, there's an employee benefits group that has met periodically that gives feedback to us around employee benefit offerings. The Employee Recognition Committee is that wonderful committee that's responsible for Employee of the Month and Employee of the Year, and then our December celebration that we have, which we've unfortunately had to do virtually or differently last couple of years. And then there's an employee feedback committee, which is also a way for us to get information. Among all the other ways, we really hope that employees feel comfortable telling us what their needs are. So we continuously supported employees during the pandemic. That meant all of our regular services needed to be inclusive of the COVID policies. We needed to make sure employee communications were there, training, sanitation. I personally get every request for emergency sick leave. I'm part of the COVID employee support group, and we are a good team. We've worked well together. It's a great group of people who are really paying attention. So we've coordinated drug and alcohol awareness training. That's actually been going on over the last few days. That allows us to stay legally compliant with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act requirements or Department of Transportation requirements. And we work closely with our vendor that we use for our drug and alcohol testing, who's incredibly knowledgeable. We've met with key individuals. We're trying to customize a gender identity training. This is a personal goal of mine. I really want to develop training that is like compassionate conversation. I think the best way to deal with implicit bias, to deal with gender identity issues, to deal with any of those issues in the workplace that aren't respectful of individual variety and strength is best, it would just best be handled if it's in the voice of individuals who have the experience, and that it is navigated in a way that people understand that only relationship is what is going to change people's biases. And, excuse me, I should have brought some water. So I'm passionate about that. We are trying to figure out a way. I've already got resources lined up, commitment from our own PEG Studio group, talk to Mitchell, et cetera. I'm just trying to line up the partners in this so that we can deliver this in a really good way. I also, when we are reminded, let me just call it that, reminded that our awareness needs to expand. I've been fortunate in the position that I hold to be able to also review what are our benefit offerings. Do we have a benefit plan, or does our health insurance cover those things that are the right initiatives for this city and will give the resources to those employees that are in need? So I was able to review our benefit plan years ago with regard to gender bias. And I can tell you that the plan changes that were made back then was already, I know that County Executive Pittman put something out robust, but we were already there. We'd already done that. So we were in a good position to say that that matters to us and that we're capable of that level of review as well. So because of that and other situations, I think we're also poised to address police reform. I know because I listened to the presentation from the police department, and you know that part of their effort is to go forth with intensive trauma training. And so that is part of that wellness initiative for police officers, which will always carry over into community policing as well. When you take care of your employees, their best behavior is able to show up. And so I have been reviewing our health plan, trying to carve out a way to also provide that trauma assistance through our benefit program. I just needed to say that as well. So we've continued to conduct virtual open enrollment because of COVID. That we've gotten decent feedback about that because employees know that that's something they can complete relatively quickly, and that if they need more, we give them more. So we also, as a way of managing our benefit plan, because we implemented a little bit ago a pharmacy benefit management initiative. So far, in 3 quarters of this fiscal year, we have saved over $350,000 utilizing that pharmacy benefit management company. That's not small dollars. And so as a result of that, we've been able to do cost containment, and we're trying to reduce our overall health plan costs. It's pretty significant when 36% of your benefit costs are pharmacy related. So we're trying to reduce that and also hold back any price increases, any. Thank you, Regina. Awesome. She looks out for me.
It's all about our employees.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So nice.
That's how you do better with less, right? So our prescription drug costs ratio is going down with our so the pharmacy benefit management is doing a couple of things. Most of the cost containment, and this is where I could really jump up on my soapbox because I feel like, we as employers, we as agencies end up absorbing an incredible amount of cost, which could otherwise be regulated and is not. And so the pharmacy companies continue to increase their medications and costs, develop these designer drugs. They get prescribed, our employees need them, get them, and there we are. So the pharmacy benefit program, management company rather, is getting us rebates on some of those specialty drugs, considerable rebates on some of those specialty drugs, and also making sure that doctors are really reviewing the recipients' need, their clients, their patients' need for those medications. Two. Thank you. I really feel cared for now. Thank you. So we also carved out our 65 and older employees, and that means that for our active employees, they're not absorbing an odd ratio of cost based on retirees. But honestly, we've been managing with the retiree plan quite well in addition. And now what they asked for and wanted was a true Medicare wrap, which for the retiree saves them a lot more out-of-pocket expenses now. So we heard them, we changed. So as I sort of alluded to, I'm also a member of the Maryland State Police Reform Working Group. Rhonda McCoy chairs that group very ably, I must say. And so we've been working on implementation of the state law, but we're also really paying attention to the trauma response services as part of that as well. I've been helping with reviewing the expectations around the wellness, biannual wellness review, the physical agility expectations. We are waiting for the state to give us what we're supposed to react to move that along, but we are on top of things there. I don't know, typically some of those expenses would have been in HR, but I'm sure that'll all get figured out. I just want to make sure you know, none of my budget items are related to funding police reform. So we also have continued with the virtual platform for all of the commissions and boards that we support. We participate in the police and fire pension plan, and we have been looking at the city's investments in Russia and Belarus, as well as fossil fuels, so that we align with the city's mission and vision. That's another, just kudos to the city here. When something appears that we can show where we stand in terms of our vision, our expectation, our sense of equality, environmental responsibility, I want you to know it's carried through in even our investment level decisions. I've seen a decline in this, but unfortunately during COVID, there was an incredible amount of unemployment fraud. There's a lot of people, a lot of employees who didn't file a claim with unemployment and yet had a claim filed. So we have help them navigate identity theft concerns, et cetera, throughout that. As already said, we've started collective bargaining. We're ending the 4th year of a 4-year agreement. So far, we are entering into an FY23, possibly FY24 contract period. But we continue to meet, and we'll be wrapping that up, hopefully not in the too distant future. During the course of that includes a lot of data gathering, a lot of analysis, a lot of review of what other jurisdictions are paying for their positions that are covered by the bargaining units, benefit assessments, and of course, being a member of the joint management and union meetings, an active partner in all of that. So we were able to do safe and best practices in administering the police and fire promotional processes with the COVID protocols in place. We've handled in-person written and oral exams. We work very closely with our vendors, and we've navigated the appeals process according to the bargaining unit agreements. And since we're doing police and fire both now for promotion, we are handling that for both of those agencies. As I alluded to before, been working with the Public Works Department's effort to develop career ladders. That's been a joint representative group of employees that are in the AFSCME units as well as in non-represented ranks. Director Johnson kind of separated those two to operational, focused, field-related positions and those that are primarily the engineering group, because a lot of the engineering and inspections related. We've done career fairs for public safety during the course of this fiscal year to date. We facilitated a police recruitment task force that the Human Relations Commission was approached by the caucus to do, and so that has had an impact on police recruitment at the entry level. And of course, we do all the regular business of making sure we're complying with the Affordable Care Act and issuing the 1095 statements and other compliance with the IRS regulations related to the Affordable Care Act. Okay, goals. So to ensure the city workforce is highly qualified and diverse, we ensure our job descriptions are representative of the job tasks and the credentials needed to perform those positions, and that they support the operational and programmatic focus of city government. We provide guidance and support to departments during recruitment and in the examination phases of the selection process, and we provide outreach assistance in order to encourage and support diversity in recruitment. So our benchmarks. We are building our job descriptions. This has been longer than I expected. We had the consultant study with Evergreen years ago. We're using the Evergreen format, but all of our job descriptions go through that level of scrutiny and redesign and therefore presentation to the Civil Service Board before they are considered representational of what the positions are. We also provide feedback to the departments through the recruitment and promotional process. We have guidelines and documents that go to the departments at the time that position announcements close, so they know who the applicant pool is and know what their responsibilities are during the selection process. So some of our performance measures are, we look at the number of organizations that are engaged in outreach. When we have positions for which there are organizations, primarily affiliate membership groups, for example, Women in Business, or I'm drawing a blank, I have no idea. But there are many organizations that are specific to public works, specific to finance, specific to law, that we're able to do outreach with and utilize their listservs to get the announcements out to them. We also use online services that have membership organizations that they specifically push out to. And so we ensure that we do that. The social media programs are primarily around law enforcement because, as you know, recruitment in public safety in law enforcement has been a bit of a challenge. And so we support those efforts of the police department. We try to judge a number of applicants using online versus hard copy applications. That's kind of not a good measure this year with a dysfunctional application management system, but that'll improve. Goal 2 is to recruit, retain, and engage employees through competitive and comprehensive benefit programs. Our objectives are to offer benefit packages that are robust and able to attract and retain city employees. We allow feedback from employees and retirees to inform our benefit selection, which also includes benefit improvement. So if our vendor isn't quite performing up to our level of expectation, like customer service isn't at the level, we kind of use our weight and try to get that fixed quickly. And so we update and change those as needed, and we make sure that we've got some product improvement in that as well. So we utilize, under the benchmarks, we utilize cost management services to control rising cost of benefits. We review the summary plan documents, ensure inclusive and non-discriminatory offerings for city employees. We do quarterly meetings with our providers to evaluate the cost and the data and reevaluate our vendor support. Pam Nickerson, who's with Insurance Solutions, Larry Uvala retired. So Pam is our principal, and she's very good and is very responsive. Her team is very responsive to our needs for information so that we can have a good base for evaluation. And then when we complete our evaluation of those benefit services, we make sure that we make adjustment as needed. Goal 3 is to ensure employees and retirees are satisfied with access to benefits. One thing that we had learned is that employees really went into our choice of vendors for our 65 and older retirees, because not only are they getting a Medicare wrap, they are kind of offline in terms of paying for that. So you need to make sure that their payment systems work for them as well. And so we are quick around those elements as well. I don't want to be redundant, so I'm going to move as quickly through this. So I already mentioned how we go about meeting that objective. We maintain at minimal cost to employees. We have not had premium increase for 3 years now, I think, or more. When we did have a price increase, we managed to minimize that because we were also under our collective bargaining agreement moving from a cost share difference for our employees, and we minimized the impact of that cost share change. We resolve our complaints quickly when they are easily resolved. In some cases, they take longer, and I can say that some of those changes were resolved by benefit change itself. And that's not an overnight sensation, but it's longer than 48 hours. So goal 4, ensure the city workforce is well trained in best practices and latest technology. Coordinate a cost-effective opportunity to train our employees. We know that departmental budgets and our own were pretty slim in that regard. That was one of the ways that we did cost savings in order to get through our last 2 years. And so our benchmarks were realized with our supervisory training. We were able to do in-house, and we did the CDL license holder drug and alcohol. And then we did online offerings in workplace discrimination and gender identity. That was the MCCR. And then our performance measures are among the number of employees who have access to that free training and can participate in at least 2 courses. So what went well? Cost containment on benefit offerings, increasing our performance expectation of our benefit vendors, ensuring the benefit offerings meet employee and retiree needs. What were least successfully completed? Increasing our online application ratio. That's totally because the system wasn't working. Employee access to training. One thing we realized with free training, you don't get to know who participated. That's unfortunate, so I can't really measure it. We can offer it, I can't really measure it because they have the stats. They offered the free training. And the diversity outreach, in-person outreach due to the COVID restrictions was a challenge. So this is now our, kind of a summary of our budget. So you can see that we're proposing an increase in contract services. As well as our budgets and and other. We'll get into that a little bit more. Salary and benefit offerings, they just go up. You know, you have people that are getting merit increases, you have benefit costs, because they're based on salary, that'll change as well. So in contract services, as I mentioned, we're doing police and fire promotions right now. We did not fund entry level last time around. We need to fund entry level. You know, that has clearly been a goal and expectation spoken to you by the fire department, by the police department. We do need to do entry level examinations. That's just the written exam costs. The CDL license renewal reimbursement, that is a contractual obligation with AFSCME. We do pay for already and are budgeted for paying for their physical examinations that are necessary to maintain their CDL. And then I see that the Gmail account responsibilities are now brought in under our budget. So our physical examinations also had to increase. Our vendor costs went up by a lot. And we have, just so you know, we have agreements with our current vendors. They're on a renewal basis. So these are based on our current vendors' price increases. So our approved budget for FY22, our current year, is $65,600. We have pre-employment physical exams, pre-employment psychological exams. We have the CDL license physical exams as part of that. I have fitness for duty. We've had a lot of fitness for duty of late. I mean, you want to make sure your employees are capable of doing their jobs, and we sometimes get asked by department heads to evaluate people who've been out for an extended period of time, and their doctors are not providing us information to indicate they're going to come back anytime soon. And so we use this budget also for our fitness for duty exams. So that's the basis of the increase. Under contract services, as I said earlier, the free webinars, that was the COVID benefit, you know, as if COVID gave us many benefits. That was one. And so to deliver training, it's going to shift to in person, and you know, we reduced that in order to meet the budget expectations in the past, but we can't continue to do that and provide training. And it's a very modest budget for citywide training overall. Again, in-person versus webinar, our training, education, and mileage budget we're increasing because we have a need to have our employees in our department maintain their certifications. We have Society for Human Resource Management certification that some of us hold, as well as the International Public Management Association Human Resources certification. It's a senior professional. I actually hold both of those certifications. And so in order to maintain your credentials, you have to have certain training hours as well as membership. We didn't really ask for any enhancements per se. We asked for restoration and asked for meeting the increases that our vendors passed on to us. And so that's really, we try our best to do things on a very, very modest budget. You can tell that our percent, I think we're at like 94% of our entire budget is our people. So operationally, we don't have a lot here that we're working with. We try to do things by developing it in-house. I've brought my own expertise from many years in this field to try to not hire others to do classification compensation work, for example. I pretty much handle that myself. To bring in vendors to do other kinds of work that might be of assistance here. For example, the police department prepares the oral examination questions, and then we work very closely on reviewing those to make sure that the way that the benchmarks are set and the way it's scored are reasonable and consistent across the board. So there's opportunity to bring in outside expertise, but I just want you to know that we do our best to try to not spend in areas that, but you do what you can with what you got. And so this is what we have, and this is what I'm asking for this year for human resources.
I have a text from Rob. Tricia, thank you for not only being a steward of your own budget, you're, I think, 1% of the general fund, but also being a steward and very cognizant of our entire budget, especially, your work on our health and prescription costs. Thank you so much for that. I just have a general question and then 3 more specific questions. My general question is, you speak of performance measures that you were not able to achieve. Have you realigned your budget so that it is focused on meeting those performance measures for the next cycle?
Well, one of those performance measures clearly was the online application. That's only recently gotten repaired. So that I imagine we're going to recover from pretty quickly. Most individuals do their interactions online. They were all too happy to change back to an online application system. So we definitely will do that. Within our budget, we will go back to our partnerships with career fairs and the like. Oops, sorry, I'm using it.
So your budget includes going back to, and this happened, I believe, with transportation, sort of an inverted bell curve. You're basically going back to pre-COVID costs, unfortunately, but you've included that.
Yes.
I did not know how strong your interface was with recruitment of police officers. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You mentioned about your interface with the police department on recruitment of police officers. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that,
Yes.
because that's a big
So sometimes
issue.
our recruitment administrator, Claudia Barber, will go out to career fairs with the police department and will find opportunities that she then arranges with the police department to utilize. In my professional experience, the way to really draw people into law enforcement is for your law enforcement recruiters to be that presence, because they are the ones that will speak directly to the candidates as to the attractive parts, what your car looks like, your uniform presence, what are your specialized units, what are your opportunities coming into the department for promotion, for learning opportunities, for all of that. And it's humbly, I say that humbly because it's not that we don't solicit that information, but it's just so much more effective when that presence is coming from a law enforcement professional. And so our work is best to support that in that regard.
Are you satisfied with the amount of money you have in for training? And I say training as far as, diversity, gender issues, all sorts of, just staying ahead of all that, instead of reactive.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'm thinking.
That was a
speaking
softball
out
question.
loud. I'm thinking and speaking out loud because part of what I scrutinize in the training offerings is that, will it work here? Is this going to meet our cultural needs? And that's why I've really been, if I could just clone myself a little bit more, I would really, really like to do this compassionate conversation style of training, which means that to do it well, it would be good to have a training vendor who could help create a customized approach. And I believe that the talent is available. I've already been talking, with regard to gender identity, I make sure I keep my ears open and make sure that I'm listening to the best of my ability to people who speak from experience, so that what I'm attracting to make that possible is individuals who would be the right, if you did it in like a town hall style. I'm just using this as an example. This is not the only example, but I'm just going to use it as an example. If you did it in a town hall style where you had individuals who spoke from their own experience, and then you did it in a method that allowed people to ask questions, and maybe you stage those questions so it's meaningful, so people learn what's okay to ask, what's not okay to ask. So people learn, learn from somebody else's experience, and learn that in that format, you're probably going to get over what I know as some of the reaction to individuals who may not be like you, so that what you have as your own lens starts getting unfogged a bit, right? And so you get in a better situation where that's an exchange and a building of relationships. So if we did something like that and recorded it and then made it available, not just for the city employees, but that could, in partnership with the Human Relations Commission, could be used as yet another example of the city putting out for our citizens a useful piece of training that could have an even broader reach and meet the goals and objectives and mission, vision, everything of this city government.
Thank you for that. And my last question is, you spoke of a Bill of Rights. What is that? Is it something that needs to be updated? How do you use it? Where does it come from?
I said a Bill of Rights?
That's what I wrote down. It sounded kind of weird.
It does. I don't know if I said it.
Did you? I thought you mentioned, that's why I wrote it down. Well, we'll ignore that question.
Okay.
And I just want to conclude and say, I know you didn't have it as a priority, a written priority, but what really comes across in your presentation is that you want to make sure that our employees feel comfortable in the workplace.
I do.
Yeah, you can tell.
I really do.
Thank you.
And to that extent, I hope our ethic, I walked into this human resources finding it here already, which was that it didn't matter what your issue was, just come and talk to us. We'll help you figure it out, or empower you to figure it out yourself. But a listening ear, a guiding ear, relevant, irrelevant, sometimes you can't sort it out. You need somebody to hear you. And then that for us is the kind of feedback, even like I said before, somebody may not know the right question to ask, but your ability to anticipate what they really should have asked you and what you can learn from it to make a change is really the ethic you should have in this field.
Certainly from your experience, you have that talent, so thank you. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. What can I say?
I don't know.
A lot. I am overwhelmed, and we all should be, at the complexity of what HR does. I am still saddened that previous administrations saw fit to reduce your department from a department to a division. Because truly, none of our 600 or 700 employees would be able to work comfortably in the city without what your department does. And so and I'm hoping at some point in the future, we will be able to see, appreciate, and highlight what HR does. You have touched on so many different areas of your responsibility. So I have to start by saying that I have a lot of questions. I want your story told more and more, and it's not. Our employees know you exist when their paycheck isn't right, or when they don't have access to a benefit that they expect. But you're here, and as the chairwoman said, to make everybody comfortable in what they do. You know, I always say we're a service organization. We don't have a widget or a product to produce. We provide services to all of the residents. Well, your responsibility is to provide those services to our employees. And if they're not taken care of and feeling good, then they're not providing good services to the community. So your department is vital. And so thank you, and thank all of you for what you do behind the scenes every single day for us.
Well, and it's an amazing team. I want to make sure you know that. I'm representing a team.
Of seven.
Of seven.
Of seven.
And we're grateful to have gotten some of them back. We were a little bit smaller.
Can she introduce who's here?
I will. Would you introduce your staff who are with us this morning?
I actually don't have
Oh, I'm
any of
sorry,
my
these are miss.
Are they all fine? See, we don't see more.
Well, could you, well, she does.
I can speak their names.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So
So see, we're totally confused between finance and
See,
HR.
that just shows
Sorry.
you.
they're working right now.
Of course.
So Tara Kimbo is our HR administrator. Laurie Gardner is our benefits administrator. Claudia Barber is our recruitment employee relations administrator. Dee Creek is our HR office administrator. Robin Dom is our HR associate. And EJ Jones is our office associate one.
And I have to say, EJ came to us through my summer jobs program.
She did. She
Was
did.
that 6 years ago, 5 years ago?
That's a success story.
Maybe five now.
And so she is
And
still
we are
working in the department. Awesome.
Fortunate to get a civil service job and to get EJ in that role. Very fortunate. You know, when COVID hit, the first thing I thought is, how the heck are we going to keep EJ busy? Oh my gosh. Technologically, she is amazing. You know, you call HR and then, you know, of course, when our buildings were closed down, MIT helped us immediately set up a system where you could literally hear somebody's voicemail through your email system. So that got referred in seconds after received. It was forwarded to the right person or responded to. So everybody did that. Everybody did that work during that period of time, and continues to. I don't go it alone here. I mean, I may be the voice here, but I am only representing a team here.
Well, thank you again, and thank all of them for everything. My first question deals with contract employees. You recall a number of years ago, we had over 100 contract employees, and we had a task force. Alderman Arnett served with me on that task force to reduce the number of contract employees, because These are folks who have been working with us for some 10 years and still had not gotten a civil service position. And, you know, one year we chipped away and got about a third of them, I think, taken care of, and then another year, and then we kind of lost track. So where are we with moving people from contract to civil service employment?
So we made a lot of progress. We're making pretty effective progress than COVID. But there have been a number of conversions. Some of the things you do not see is that there were also maybe a person didn't get converted, but their position got converted to civil service before it got filled again. And so that number, I don't have a number for you right now of where we are, but I know that there have been additional requests for conversions in this year's budget. We've been handling them. Again, I have to write job descriptions and, deal with all of that. In a merit system, even contractual employees have to compete for the position. But we're able, if somebody has held the contractual position that's literally being converted, not changed to something else, but converted, they can apply as an internal candidate, and we can therefore restrict the pool of candidates for it. We've done well with that over time. And I know the goal is during this year's budget to do more. You know that we put employment agreement language in Article 3 in the Human Resources section of the code, so that we are committed to a conversion in 5 years, 5 fiscal years, not 5 actual years, but within 5 fiscal years. And so we're working our way through that as well. We'll honor
Well, thank
that.
you, and I'm glad to hear that we're still moving in the right direction with those
We are.
positions.
We absolutely are. And you'll just see it in the different budgets, I'm sure.
Compensation for vacant positions, recruitment. I've heard the procurement position. I've heard several positions, including director's positions, we're having, I'll say, a challenge in filling those positions. Do you track competitive, comparable salaries? My question really is, are we where we should be in order to be able to recruit and retain the best and brightest in the city?
In some circumstances, yes. In some circumstances, it's challenging. We do, as an organization, participate in the Local Government Personnel Association survey. And as a result of that participation, we get data from surrounding jurisdictions in Northern Virginia and throughout the state of Maryland. When we did the Evergreen study, we agreed on who our comparators were. And so the first review I need to absolutely do is to make sure I'm using similar comparators so that we see where we stand with others. Kind of a good news is that, when COVID really hit other jurisdictions, we implemented our collective bargaining agreements. So we gave 3% COLAs for 2 years to our general scale employees and fire employees, and 2.5 to police in this current year. That helped, definitely helped. Some of those other jurisdictions didn't give merit increases. Our merit increases are 5.361%. Part of our challenge is that when you get to the top of the scale, you're getting to longevity steps. And if you're bringing somebody in with senior level experience, which you want the best you can get, you are probably bringing them in so that they're going to be waiting for longevity steps to occur for them to see increases. So that's part of the scale design component too that's impacting us.
Well, I hadn't thought about the impact that COVID was having on our inability to hire. I think nationwide we hear about the trend of people not wanting to go back to work. And, I guess once the unemployment ran out and people, for some reason, I guess, hopefully are starting now to
Yeah.
seek out employment, and maybe we'll have better luck. I hate to call it luck, but
Well, I read the HR resources that come to me as well, and this just seems to be something that many jurisdictions are experiencing. Just many. Like you said, we don't sell a product. So if you decided in COVID that what you were doing wasn't fulfilling you and you made another decision to change up, maybe you were working in an industry that was frontline, very exposed. I mean, I look at restaurant workers, just as an example. Their income had to take a deep dive based on the way COVID impacted their profession. I also think that some people, just in general, because other people were looking, took another look at their own experience and said, is this what I want to do? Now, we have had, since the beginning of this fiscal year, 46 full-time employees.
46 what?
Terminations.
Oh, okay.
10 of those were retirements, though. Which, when people get to retirement at a level, they can make that decision. Now, did some of them make that decision to say, well, I might have waited longer, but I'm going to go now? Possibly. But we had 30 resignations. And I only do the full-time numbers because, Rec and Parks, there's a lot of turnover with staffing up and staffing down for their programs. So I thought that wouldn't really communicate this well. So, of those 30 that resigned, 11 of them were police officers. So we know that in this budget and this collective bargaining and everything, we got our work cut out for ourselves, right? But we also hired 47 people, So we're not letting our vacancies just linger. And there are instances where it is hard to fill some positions, but you also have to consider that labor pool may be a really tight labor pool for that particular specialty. We had difficulty getting a traffic engineer, and I know, older woman, that you tried. You tried, but, we can only attract what's available. And it just may be that in some circumstances, that's what we're running into in terms of filling positions. So you can't always say that it's what we're paying and what we're offering. It's part of the equation. But sometimes you can throw a lot of money at something and it will never give you, it won't be enough bait. It won't be the bait. And do you want bait? You want somebody that wants to come to work here. You want somebody that wants to be part of I know many of us like to say our family, our working group of people that care about each other.
Well, I guess the positions we hear about are at the director level or close.
Yeah.
So we don't hear about the other positions, the other 30 positions, and that you were able to fill those positions. And that's promising. That's good news.
Yeah, but there are going to be industries that get hit, right? When the construction industry has a rise, when it's returning, we always have difficulty with our trades. We have great commitment and people stay. And some of the folks that leave us retire from here. That's often. That's a wonderful gift, that you have employees staying until they retire. But replacing them and what they've gained in talent and ability over time is not easily replaced. I find that a lot of the talent that people bring to a job where they have staying power grows over time, expands outward. And so I'll just use human resources as an example. You have people that might have gotten hired because they had a certain specialty that they possessed. When they get into an environment where you gotta do more than that specialty, they learn, they grow, they then have greater talents that they can employ while they're working for you and working with you.
A greater benefit to us.
Yeah,
I'll try to be quick. The EAP program,
yes.
you know, within the last, I guess, year, we've had 2 tragedies in our family.
We have. And we're still
Is
feeling
there-
that.
I'm sorry?
And we're still feeling that.
Yeah. Because I'm still thinking about it and therefore asking the question. Should we do more to support? And I don't know the depth of the program, but is everybody aware, invited to participate? How can we reach those people that may be on the edge?
So we just had Laurie and I just had a meeting with our EAP representative this past week. And we talked exactly about that and more. We are asking them to give us training resources in this area, as well as they have, their website is really very accessible and has a lot of that kind of information. It just takes people going to it and using it. And I'm not pleased with our utilization level, especially given all of the stressors individuals have experienced. I do also keep track of COVID-related expenses on our health insurance. So I believe that our resources on that side have been utilized more. And again, it's not just EAP, but we're trying to have offerings that are more trauma-based in reference, right? Because some individuals don't realize they're at the edge, because a lot of what happens, especially for people who are depressed, is they are flat. They're not feeling. They are not engaged. They are not able to assess where they are. And they tend to make those decisions in the absence of feeling, not the direction from feeling or the impact of feeling. And that's significant. And I need to say that out loud because, you know, that takes an awareness and we're not social workers, we're not counselors, we're not mental health professionals, we're just caring coworkers that I would want to see ways to empower our employees to take notice and figure out ways to be more aware. And so we did push out that we set up and made available our EAP provider for anybody that sought interaction with our EAP, specifically around the events. And people don't feel, it takes a while to feel it, you know, it takes a while for it to settle in, even as somebody that cares about a person they lost. I know it all too well myself. You know, it takes a while to get to that place where it's starting to really impact your thinking and you're aware that it impacted you.
Well, I just think we all kind of have a responsibility to be observant and to be caring and to not hesitate to offer.
Right.
You know, so anyway, 2 retirement systems that you're juggling in that you have police and fire, and then you have, do we have 2 different state retirement systems? Just
No,
one?
we just have the one, and we don't have decision-making power there. We don't get to set policy around that. We just get to react to their audits and learn from them and pay them.
And pay them. Yeah,
Yes.
so.
But I will tell you, even with their audits, that we defend the city quite robustly around what we feel is fair and reasonable and should be expected of us in terms of interpretation of their COMAR regulations. They are very clear that we are not empowered to make those kinds of rulings around a person's qualification for retirement, what type of retirement benefits. However, there are certain regulatory authorities that we need to be much more aware of in order to carry that out. But it's their responsibility to inform us and tell us, and us to hear it and apply it.
Just wanted to acknowledge the fact that, you're juggling a lot of different responsibilities. The police and fire is our own product. And I was quite impressed when you mentioned the fact that you're evaluating the investments in Russia and Belarus. You're on it.
Yeah, and we would probably have less investment there if President Putin hadn't closed the Russian stock market. So we do what we can to react quickly and, use our vendors to look out for us in that regard.
The Police Accountability Board that has come out of the state legislation on policing. Will you, and I know the county has the responsibility of creating the PAB, will you have any input representing the city? You deal with complaints and concerns for city residents or for city employees. Will you have any responsibility at the county level, or do you interact with the person at the county you're comparable?
As an HR person, no. As a member of the police reform working group, yes. We talked that through. The representation with the county delegation is primarily handled by the police department and Office of Law. But in terms of talking it through and being part of those discussions, yes, as a member of the working group.
Okay, thank you. It's good to know, and I think our employees will appreciate that also. Hard copy work versus online applications. So you feel good that we're going to be moving towards that. In today's time, it's hard to believe that people are asking for a hard copy.
They didn't have a choice.
Well, yes.
And given the choice, I know they're not going to ask for that hard copy application, so, yeah.
Retiree health care. When they reach 65 or Medicare age, did they automatically go into Medicare? Do you know, as far as prescription plans are concerned?
So they do go into Medicare, but they also have the option. They don't have to choose it, but they have the option of signing up for the city's retiree Medicare wrap.
So that'll be a
program.
Supplemental, the cities will be the supplemental for them. Okay. I think most people don't realize that we have retirees, first of all, and that we pay them for their years of service, and they get health care in retirement.
So we've done two things with regard to that, at least two things, maybe more. When we were looking at the GASB impact, which is just a mounting unfunded cost around retiree health, we were able, and it's actually brought to us as an idea by the AFSCME council rep, we set up VIBA. So shifting from our OPEB cost to the VIBA cost has also helped a great deal. That doesn't mean that an employee who entered VIBA doesn't also get the opportunity to join that group plan with the wrap, but now they have money that's been invested along the time from their contribution and the city's contribution, so it can grow, and they can use that to pay those premiums as well. So on a couple of fronts, they've got that level of support.
Well, you mentioned training several times. Does each department, there was at one time when our budget was really tight, we cut out, you may recall, we eliminated all training
Yeah.
in all departments. Are we, and maybe this is not a question you can answer, but are we back to where we used to be as far as training is concerned?
I'd have to go back and look at those dollars. Obviously, we've got price increases as well, but do you mind if I
No,
answer
that's
that
fine.
later?
I'd just be interested in knowing
Okay.
whether we should be doing something to buoy up trainings across the board.
Okay. I'll take a look at that and let you know.
Okay, that'd be great. Did we lay off anyone during COVID?
No.
Okay. Career ladders. You mentioned Mr. Johnson in DPW. And I recall that Rex and Parks was supposed to be working. Is every department encouraged to create a career ladder?
So that has not occurred yet. The initiative is centered in Public Works at this time. Clearly, we have very similar positions on the park side as we do to Public Works. So that build would not be difficult to accomplish. Director Johnson made a presentation during our Ask Me bargaining session so that they heard and learned about the manner in which it's under review. And so, not that we're turning over our classification and compensation decisions or basing it in collective bargaining, but it's a partnership, right? It's a reasonable partnership to make sure that the information flows between and that you get feedback from the bargaining unit members as well so the design is a good one. And we realized that was going to take focus during collective bargaining that we probably didn't have enough time for. So what we'll more than likely do is agree to like a summer study or, the first half of the fiscal year review of that in order to get a good design in place. And conceptually, the idea is that as people grow and mature in their skills and their applied job tasks align with higher level positions, that they don't have to compete for that increase, that they are promoted in place, so to speak. And so that's something that they would have to be able to afford and absorb in their budget, which would be another element associated with that kind of change. But it's a good design. It's something that I have experienced in my prior career at the county, was part of the development of that as well. And it's a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just pleased that we're moving in that direction.
Yeah.
It's definitely a retention tool for us
It is.
also.
And another advantage it is that if you are recruiting and you're not attracting somebody that's at that seasoned level, you may be able to hire somebody at an appropriate level and then put money into training, into some other certifications or the like, so that person's developing and getting to that place. And when they're at that place, you can move them to the level that's in line. And so it's a savings of money. It could be a savings of money if you're not able to attract exactly what you need for succession.
Thank you. I like your terminology, restoration versus enhancements. Are all of your restoration items included in the mayor's budget?
I believe so, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you have no enhancements that have not been funded. That's all good.
There actually weren't any true enhancement requests.
Yeah,
So
her
we-
last slide says that.
So HR was one of the departments that put forth the most cuts last budget cycle. So we're just restoring previous funding for them.
Okay, I just need to check to make sure.
So we gave it the office.
Okay. I just
right.
want to
Well,
remind,
excuse-
I just want to remind you that we're at the halfway point, and I want to
Madam Chair, I have no more questions to
Okay,
ask.
good.
So I just wanted to thank
Yeah.
Ms. Hopkins for
And if
sharing.
you have other questions that I
Yeah,
can answer for you, just let me know.
yeah, I just want
Thank
to
you
give,
very much.
I want to give equal time to finance. We have a full plate tomorrow, and we don't want to go over 1 o'clock. So, Alderwoman O'Neill, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
We can go for another 10 minutes or so.
Just a couple quick questions. Thank you very much for your report. It was very well outlined and easy to follow. One question I had was, during COVID, I know that we did a lot of flexible work from home. Most people were working from home. Is that continuing to be offered as an option as well as a benefit to employees, both current employees and new hires?
So we released the telework policy again, and so employees are expected to work with their department head. So it's really at the discretion of the department head how many days in the office, how you manage your office with that as a component of office management. And so they're starting to come in. I'm the last signature on those telework forms, so they're starting to cycle through the reissue.
Great, thank you. And then my other question for you is, in response to early on in the highlights, you were talking about the employee feedback and the process for that. Is that something that is utilized by the employees? Could it be a more robust program, or is it pretty robust as far as?
It could be more robust, absolutely. I think that some of our employee groups need membership, so, and because in-person meetings weren't really happening very much at all, I think some of those employee focus groups just kind of fell by the wayside. Not completely, but not meeting as nearly as much as they had been. So we have to give it a little bit of a boost. Maybe that's what we need to do.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that. Look forward to seeing that boost.
Me too.
Thank you.
Alderman Arnett, do you have any questions?
No, I do have, but I can follow up on those in the interest of time. Just a comment, I think one of the great benefits of the annual budget process is the reminder of what all of our departments do for us and how they impact things. And looking at your budget, your increase is extremely modest. So I think we're happy with what we see. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Gay, do you have any questions?
I do, and I just first want to say I understand the committee's desire to dismiss before 1 o'clock p.m., but at some point that has to be viewed as unreasonable. We're sitting through 45 minutes of presentation, 30 minutes of question and answer, and some of us, I'm taking off of work to be here. I would appreciate my time to be respected so that I can ask the questions. We don't get the department chairs in front of us often. We only have 3 dates scheduled in May, 10 days before the amendments are due for deliberation. We have to take advantage of this time. My first question is, you alluded earlier to equality within an individual's decision, how they live their life, as it relates to sexual preference and how they want to be addressed and identified. And that has nothing to, it's not my business, and I don't think it's any of our business here on the dais, but I do have the question of, has the city paid for in health or in health benefit agreements, paid for like sexual, I don't even know what is it when you just go through the process of
So gender affirmation.
Okay, is that the correct title? Gender affirmation? Is that?
So our health insurance plan does not discriminate in our surgical benefits and our other health benefits, including mental health benefits, for individuals who have a need, a desire, an expectation for gender affirmation services.
So I think that's great, but is the full cost of the surgery or the procedure paid for, or is that something that?
At the same benefit levels as any other type
Okay.
of surgical benefit.
I appreciate you even giving me the title, gender affirmation. I've spoken to you previously about cannabis use for city employees, and you felt pretty comfortable today talking about prescription pills and the advocacy that the HR department has done between pharmaceutical reps, almost encouraging the use of prescription pills when they're going through any health process and they're prescribed that. What efforts have the HR department done since our conversation in 2019 to encourage city employees to take advantage of medical cannabis as an alternative? Is that something that can be attached to benefits? Is the city able to help pay for application processing fees? Because it should be viewed as a medical enhancement, as something that that we should advocate for over the use of any prescription pills. New Jersey just passed recreational use of marijuana. And I remember when we had our discussion in 2019, we talked about the difficulties of operating heavy machinery versus being a police officer or a firefighter, and opting for, to use cannabis over prescription pills. They made it very clear within their, when they passed the law, that police officers would be eligible for the use. And I've told you previously, and I think I stand by it even today, there is no difference in me going home and having 3 drinks and me going home and smoking medical cannabis. In fact, I would argue that I feel better waking up the next morning using cannabis as opposed to the alcohol or prescription drugs. And so my question in that is, what efforts can the city do to push for advocacy within medical cannabis use?
So first, let me say that I am a lay person. I am not a medical provider, and that I would not rightfully be in the place of suggesting prescription of medical cannabis or any other drug for an employee. I'm not in a position to suggest that somebody should have X over Y in terms of their medical care. That is what a medical health system is set up to provide. So I cannot see myself engaging in that level of behavior from a professional standpoint. With regard to implementing any legal requirements that have been identified in law as they may intersect with our health provisions, I absolutely can do that.
Okay, I'll come back to that when maybe we can put out a flyer at least and say, hey, here's an option, I think it could also be cost effective too. Training, the state of Maryland just removed GED and high school requirements from roles within their office that they just don't see it being a point, and it's actually increased applications over the last few weeks. Is that something that the city of Annapolis can do? Or is it something that we're already practicing?
We actually already practice that,
Awesome.
Depending on which level of position it is in the city.
The career ladders, which has been, we discussed briefly with Alderwoman Finlayson, and which was extremely important to me in the last 2 budgets, and particularly with the Department of Public Works. And I've had conversations with employees who feel maybe that they are not valued and that there is not a place for growth, and particularly our minority employees. And I think, as the Alderwoman alluded to, across the board in our city, we should be providing those opportunities and making our employees feel that, hey, this is a place where I can grow and succeed. And so how can something, and obviously you just said you would have to go through a summer study, but what is a timeline on something like this? And I only ask just because I know we've talked about it over a number of budgets. Obviously, COVID happened, and but what is a timeline on providing even a trial and error for career ladder opportunities, or just even expanding access to resources for others to grow? I noted even you put the CDL license renewal down earlier. I think that's very, very great, and I'd love to be able to share that with my constituents and how they could apply for a program like that and take advantage of what the CDL license brings. So how can we assist you? Is it more training money? Because it doesn't seem like you have a lot of training money.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because if we were to do this in a really measured way, one thing that's been really clear, because I've attended most of the career ladder meetings myself, they are identifying skills and certifications and training and requirements through the entire series of positions in public works. And so one thing it's more than anecdotal, one thing that's clear is that as people move up the ladder, we do a pretty decent job, I've seen, of promoting people in public works. So they go from a public works maintenance worker, they get their CDL license, they go through the equipment operator series or the utility series as they build and develop those skills. And then there's the supervisory level. There are very few jobs anymore that don't require some technological expertise anymore. I mean, when you're a mechanic, you're using a bare analyzer, to just even determine what's wrong with an engine of a truck. So what I think we really need to develop more is around those technological skills, so that people have the experience of using iWorks in public works, for example, and know how to use a spreadsheet, know how to do asset tracking, so that when they move through the laboring side of things, they're ready for the supervisory side of things. They're able to be moving into those roles that are showing that they've just blossomed through their entire career. You can start at the beginning and advance all the way through with the right kind of skills development along the way. And so I think you're right. You're hitting on something for sure.
And I would just maybe hope that you would bring that back in an amendment when we meet on the 4th for your training budget, because there are offices that I care deeply about within the city that don't have succession plans in place. And we should be looking for that young talent to come in and take advantage of the knowledge that they have. Some of our employees have been here 40, 35 plus years, and it's like, they know how to do things, but sooner or later they're going to exit, and we're going to have trouble filling that role. And as the alderwoman from Ward 3 says about our police, it'd be nothing better than to have people from our communities filling these roles. 2 last questions for time. I won't go over police accountability because I trust that, I was an advocate for the bill. So mental health, I'm really, really pleased to see that in there. I've never been shy about talking about the mental health challenges that I've faced, and for our employees, I just hope that we would extend all grace. I know for me, in dealing with my mental health challenges, one of the challenges with something like that is that it really paralyzes you. And so there are days that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't work, I can't get out, And so I hope that if our employees are struggling or feeling those things, that, we're saying, okay, work from home, don't come into the office today, or take a mental health day without any, punishment on the back end and pay or anything like that, because that's a lot for people to think about. It's like, do I take care of my mental health, or do I go to work because I desperately need to be able to provide for my family? And so I'm so glad that you are right ahead of that.
But mental health is physiological. It's all physiological. We have this separation that we make between the physical health and the mental health. It's all physiological health. And we just need to recognize it, that we do, I think in a lot of segments we do, we have 15 days of sick leave a year. So that if individuals are experiencing difficulties, they have a good sick leave program. We have short-term disability as well. After somebody gets 14 days into a chronic condition, that we can support them that way as well if they run out of their own sick leave. So we don't shy away from that here. We are absolutely built around a robust and decent sick leave and disability program here.
That's fantastic. I'm so pleased to hear that. And in any way I can help support that, please let me know. And then last year, salaries jumped significantly. Is that just catching up post-COVID, or?
So I believe that the salary, Katie might be able to help me here, that the salary.
Are you talking about HR salaries
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
see in the book? So any increase that you see there is going to be a function of the COLA and the steps carrying forward from the prior period.
Okay.
There have been no COLAs for 23 put into their budget yet. It represents steps for their employees.
So okay, that's explaining the jump from.
And the related benefits that go, because as salaries climb, so do the benefits.
Awesome. All right, I appreciate that very much.
Alderman Gay, do you have a copy of the presentation?
The slide.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. If you want a hard copy, I have one too.
One more question, I'm sorry.
Okay. Alderwoman Finlayson has a question.
About Evergreen. Are we still using the Evergreen results that they?
Yes. Sorry.
And is it time for a new evaluation?
Oh,
I know.
God, I remember that.
Okay.
That's one of my questions.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That was a really visceral reaction to that.
Sorry.
It was.
Is the current one still providing the guidance that we need?
The current style and format is followed in terms of the compensation data. It's so outdated, it's not helping. So that's why I independently try to pull that from my resources with the Local Government Personnel Association. So yes and no.
I got it. Thank you.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank HR. Like I would say MIT, you all touch every single solitary person on a personal level. And that's not easy to do when you have 600 plus employees, and your expertise shines all the time, and you have a wonderful team, and I want to thank you for that. The other thing I want to say, Alderman Gay, to you, as a leader in this city and on this council, I commend you for being candid this morning about your struggle with mental illness. I think that bodes well to say it to everybody in the city. That's not easy, I'm sure, to do, but I commend you for doing that. And I think everybody in this entire world at some point goes through some sort of mental health situation. Could be very minor, could be major. But I applaud you for saying that today. It means a lot, I think, to the employees in this city, but also those of us here on the dais. And thank you for that. I want to kind of got one or two questions, but I'm listening to you, Ms. Hopkins, and your ability to listen and to incorporate the needs of the departments in order for them to be successful in responding to those needs, coupled with the fact, as far as building job descriptions, which I think is extremely important, and the need possibly to look at, and use an example, the traffic engineer position, and possibly maybe, I don't know, changing that job description, going to public safety and listening to you, saying that there were 30 resignations and 11 of those were police officers. That's 37% of that 30. And I'm just thinking and wondering, and I'm gonna kind of hone in on public safety. Is there an opportunity, maybe talking to police, fire, Office of Emergency Management, where there is a need to change job descriptions, even those that may be still in existence, reworking those based on what the nationwide culture is? Or there's a need to add a job description based on the needs and the culture of our nation and what's going on in our world?
So I don't think it's about, in all due respect, I don't think it's really about the job description. I think it's in a job market where fewer people are choosing certain occupations. If you concentrate on the culture of your organization and what invites people to you, that is much more impacting and lasting for individuals than only compensation and a good job description. We did the job description review already. It's already in the evergreen format. It's been reviewed. Could we go back and take another look? Yes, but I don't think that's what people read and understand so much when they apply for a job. They read City of Annapolis police officer, and that's what they apply for. I'm sure there are some that go through that job description to see if what they've done in their life experience will get them there. But I think the profession has enough visibility nationally for most people to know and understand what the job entails.
I'm just wondering if there's some nuance within the job description, because you talked about the police being, just using police as an example, being the best promoters of getting a recruit, a person to recruit. If there's something, whether it's police or fire, Office of Emergency Management, is there something that could be added there that kind of triggers someone saying, oh, you know what? I hadn't looked at it that way. That's something that maybe city is offering, that maybe some other jurisdiction is not offering. I'm just wondering, and I know you say you listen to your department heads to see what they're really kind of.
I'll engage them in that and see if there's something that needs to be adjusted. I would suggest, though, that the bigger piece of that is more than likely that recruiter's description of the City of Annapolis as an organization and the community served.
But not going outside
orientation
of
to
that.
community policing, that more engagement, that more civic engagement style of law enforcement is probably what's the more meaningful piece of that. And a job description is not really going to capture that so well. It's really how your website's designed, how the people speak about it, who are already members of the department, how the recruiter presents him or herself, to a potential candidate.
Okay. Just don't want to go outside of the job description, but there may be something that piques someone's who just goes on the website and sees something and go, I'm not really interested in that, but there might be some clever way, and like I said, I'm talking about public safety overall, that can be inserted in there that say, oh my goodness, I didn't know they did that. That's a little bit different from some other jurisdiction.
So it could be kind of a opening statement to the job description.
Okay. All right.
I'll take it back.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Thank you. And I think I have one other question. Oh, I want to bring up the fact that during COVID, we did have those business meetings on Mondays. The Tuesday meetings were dedicated to the leadership and those partners outside. But just give us a 25-word or less, the benefit of those Wednesday meetings that you had for HR during COVID.
So all during COVID, our employee support group was responsible for evaluating the numbers, making decisions on a weekly basis as to what policy changes, employee communications, training, responsibilities, And as I said earlier, even to the tune of, okay, should we do our fogging on a weekly basis? Just kind of go through all the building. You know, the science changed a lot during that time. So we had to really stay on top of what was coming from the CDC, what was coming from our health officer, what kind of information we were getting statistically from the state with regard to case numbers. And then we had the real experience of what are our employees going through, or their family members, because if our family members going through that, it's affecting an employee as well. I mean, we are very fortunate we did not lose any employees to COVID, but there are family members that died as a result of COVID infection. So we stay hyper aware of that information and then made policy adjustments accordingly, masking policy adjustments, cleanliness decisions. You know, we also we made decisions about our employee sick leave that we provided for COVID-related absences. And so we closely followed the feds in what they were doing and what they were requiring, but we also created our own in the absence of that.
I thought those meetings on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays were critical to the success of the city's efforts during COVID. That, to me, it was magical. And I thank, of course, Director Simmons for hosting and initiating all those. I thought it was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it was vital and huge. But
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
did feel like the COVID lens was on as the first lens.
Thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alderman Gay has another question.
Yes, just very, very quickly. The minimum wage, which we found out, I think 2 meetings ago, that it was we're still following the state wage, which I think is like $12.75. In your experience with the hiring and the applications, and in your just life experience in general, if we were to move that to what is considered the living wage of $15 an hour, will we have more success hiring and maintaining employment in some of the contractual services?
So it does. Thank you for saying contractual services, because it doesn't impact our civil service employees at all. Everybody is above the living wage. It's mostly your temporary employees and your part-time employees that may be on employment agreements. For the most part, they've done a decent job of trying to keep that at a reasonable level, but it's a funding concern. You have a lot of employees that are not a lot. You have part-time employees that aren't being paid $15 an hour yet, but we clearly are complying with the state regulations around that. And some are above that, for sure.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And Alderman Gay, I just want to say that one of these departments is getting the time. I don't think any of them are getting the time that they deserve to talk about what they do and for the public to hear what they do, unfortunately. But as chair, I have to tell you that what is before us as a committee is to review the budget and to produce a report. And so we have 20 departments that we have scheduled in a certain amount of days with this 3-hour window of time. So I'm sensitive to everybody's time. So I think it is doable if we focus on the budget and questions pertaining to the budget. And again, I agree with you, especially when it comes to people. You know, it's hard to cut you off, and I apologize, Alderman Finlayson, for cutting you off, but I kept seeing people from finance coming in. But with that, I just want to thank you, and I think you feel the love.
I do.
Oh, good. That makes us really happy.
I do, and so that's a side benefit of this, right?
Yeah. We have a gift. We have a gift for all our departments, and you get a special one. Do you have a special color, purple, pink, or green?
Green sounds good.
Which one?
Green?
Green, okay, green it is.
For money.
Yeah, green for
the
money.
employees.
Oh, we probably should have said green for finance.
Should we save green for?
No. She said,
Do you want? You can save green for finance.
she's gonna throw this.
I'm gonna throw.
Oh, you're gonna throw it?
I did not practice.
Gosh, wait a minute.
I know this is embarrassing. Oh, yeah. I wanted to show you how the lights go crazy.
See, finance got free.
Yeah, isn't that the coolest thing?
You're responsible for our paychecks, so that's.
So, are we okay with just continuing on? Okay, we'll continue on. I didn't know if
Thank
we
you
needed
all.
a break.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. How are you guys for time? Because I just, I don't want to be strict with the 1 o'clock if you,
I think I can get through my slides in about, within 30 minutes, and then have another 30 minutes.
okay, sure. Yeah. Did you have, Corey, did you have a question? Oh,
So I invited the senior staff here to, one, to see what goes on, and some of them came early, but I told them if they wanted to, they could try to wait till partway through, because I didn't know how long it was gonna take. So this is, you all know Katie.
Well, please introduce them.
Yes, I'm going to, so let me turn myself around here. All right, so I'll start here. This is Nikki Olajiri. She does our banking, pension, cash, what else? Capital projects, is kind of a catch-all senior accountant position. And Julie Donnelly, my assistant finance director, newish from last fall, and she's been taking some work off my plate since I hired her, and you'll also see her at the community grants presentation, because she was on the committee that made some of those decisions, and she will be presenting with that group. This is Pedro, Okan Ramboye. She is my lead accountant. She's a senior accountant, but she really directs the accounting staff, the general ledger staff, the reconciliations, the transactions. She knows everything about Munis and how the accounts run through Munis. It's a very complicated set of knowledge, and I'm glad to have her aboard. Of course, you all know Brian Snyder. And this is probably going to be one of the last formal meetings he attends in person. As you know, he's leaving us. Yeah, and we're planning something for him in a few days. And hope you all will stop by and give a salute and a goodbye to him with us. And then Corey Bradley, hiding in the back there. He's my risk manager. And I know that some of you have seen him, Alderwoman Finlayson, she runs into him pretty frequently. You'll see him out at sites. He does a lot of workers. He's managing the risk from the workers' standpoint. So you'll see him at work sites, doing inspections, handling workers' comp claims, helping with those issues. So that
Madam
is.
Chair, I'd like to make one comment. Ms. Donnelly, for those of us who are on the audit committee, was one of our members, so
She was.
Took her
not a
from us.
stranger.
Yes, yes, she was a member of the audit committee for a while. And I was glad to see that she applied for my job. I was very excited. So I have other members, Christy Davis and LaTanya Day. She runs our billing side, but they're always pretty busy down there, and the phones are always ringing. Christy's off with recovering from some surgery, so she's due back, I think, next week, so we'll be seeing her again. And if you can't know finance without dealing with Christy, because she's one of my key persons too. She runs the office operations side. All right, so.
And sitting next to you might be.
I think I've mentioned Katie right up front. I said, you know Katie Connolly, my senior accountant in charge of budget.
Show us your socks. Every day. It's so cool.
Has that become a thing? Yes. Okay. All right, so I'm going to follow along on mine. Sometimes even that's hard to read for me. So I'm going to start by telling you, going to the next slide. Oh, you're running it, okay. The mission. Our mission is to create and maintain systems that ensure sound and efficient management of the city's financial activities and protect the city's financial assets. I feel that needs to be expanded on. When I'm trying to write this, I was trying to make it brief, but there's also a customer service side of this. not only to the employees that we deal with through payroll, but the vendors and the citizens that we deal with through the billing side, the utility billings mainly. And we do deal a lot with the public in that way through our window and our cashiers. So there's an element to the public service that needs to be acknowledged there as well. The list that you see there is our functions. These are the typical functions that you find in most accounting departments. The budget side, which is the plan for spending, purchasing, as you know, dealing with the vendors, doing RFPs. Our billings and collections here, utilities, general billing, CFA, the capital facility assessments, the cash investment side of what we do, not only with the daily cash we're taking in, but the pensions, the pension investments, the OPEB investments, banking operations, which touches all of our financial transactions. Our operations side, which is the functioning of the office itself. Accounts payable, the paying of vendors, and processing of P-card transactions, which has become a significant part of what we do. The payroll, we pay the biweekly payroll for 600 to 700 employees, depending on how many temporary employees we have on staff at the time. Our management of debt, which includes bonds and loans. The accounting functions, the general ledger side, always very time intensive. Financial reporting, which is quarterly, annually, monthly, depending on who we're reporting to. Risk management, which is in my department because it's an attempt to keep costs down, both from workers' comp, worker safety, insurance, making sure we have adequate insurance coverage for the city, and the establishment of the internal control systems that wrap around all of these functions. So the next slide talks about, those were the simple functions, but here are a lot of the special things that have been, I would say, layered on top of what we do. Most of them initiate from programs that the council or the administration have put in place to help the citizens in various ways and get projects done. And this is showing you also that you talked about HR touching everything. Finance gets touched with everything. Every time there's a project, a plan, a purchase, we are involved from the point of the agreement all the way through getting it paid, and sometimes monitoring afterwards. We have equipment loans and bonds, and with bonds we have ongoing arbitrage analysis we have to maintain. We have reporting, we have voluntary disclosure requirements that we have to post on a federal site, and we have to go through periodic reviews with the rating agencies. Even if we're not issuing bonds, they do periodic reviews with us. In the right upper corner there, I have the short-term rentals, which I've talked about on occasion as far as bringing in our occupancy taxes and monitoring who's filing. We get reports from them on a monthly basis. And payments from them on a monthly basis. That all has to be tracked. There are many dozens of, and we may even be in the hundreds now, of properties that are reporting to us. We have several pilot agreements with properties that are not paying the normal property tax amount, but they're paying something that's been calculated in lieu of a property tax. We have leases. We now have market space leases down there with the parking spaces out in market space. We're now talking about the pilot program on the parking space leases, which is also going to be another layer to that work. We have land leases. We have properties that we lease. One came by surprise to me across from the Waterworks Park, across 450 from Waterworks Park. There's a building there that we own the land underneath. And that was brought to my attention when we got some correspondence from them, and I realized, we needed to be billing them on a regular basis, so we made sure we got the annual lease payment from them. we handle all special purchases. And the most recent two examples are there, the marina, the Bimby Beach Road Marina. Cars Beach is coming up soon. We handle those from the purchasing aspect, but there's also grants that are related to those purchases. We get POS reimbursement, so we have to assist whoever is asking for the reimbursement for those properties and follow through with the state as far as documentation as to the purchase. We are involved in all employment and other financial agreements. They at least go through my review and sometimes require some of my staff's review as well. We have historic preservation tax credits. That's quite a task on an annual basis. There's a list of people that are qualified for those taxes, and the schedule's this long, and we roll people off the list and put people on, and that's a management task that we have to undertake annually. Sprinkler tax credits and sprinkler loans. Those are both programs we manage. Recently, we've been active with the Hillman and City Dock P3. A lot of that's my involvement from attending all the meetings and discussing all the financial implications. Brian Snyder was also involved in the onset of that, as working, trying to get the, I think it was an RFI, not an RFP process that went through, but we asked for submissions for that P3. We are now in the final stages of getting the, as you know, the concession arrangement finalized, and that's taking up a substantial amount of time. We worked with the onset of that resilience authority that was formed with the county. We had to formulate what we thought they should do and what their responsibility should do. I was on that work group, and so was David Gerald and Mike Johnson. We have trust transactions that relate to the Park Place garage, where the county taxes are going into a trust. All the operating revenue goes into another trust account. We get money funneled to us from those trust accounts on a regular basis, and there's paperwork that we have to transact. Every time we want to pull down our reimbursements, we have to ask them for the funding. And when we want the trust to pay a certain expense, we have to tell them, go ahead and pay. So all of these things involve finance on a regular basis. It's just a lot of balls to have in the air at the same time. And as you know, we're starting with the electronic transit system and the ferry service. That hasn't impacted us much yet, but I'm sure once we get that established, it will. We take care of AIPPC from a staffing standpoint. We help with the community grants, Julie, from the onset of determining who gets them and then the processing of the payments. We staff the audit committee, the FAC, the finance committee, and the pension commission. And I sit on that pension commission. And we have a staff person, Nikki, because she does the pension accounting, she staffs that. We work on these affordable housing projects and other community-directed programs, and I've listed the HAC inspections that we have. We're paying on behalf of their inspection fees, the $80,000 that we put in the budget every year now, and the capital improvements that we're funding from the county that we just considered. I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, where we're going to have a grant to hack it to fund some of these capital improvements. We're going to have to review those submissions and reimburse them. All right, sorry, that took a while, but so you understand all the complexity that goes on top of everything you do in an accounting department. I decided to list those out because as I was here for the first couple of years, there were so many new things coming on that were specialized for the city. I kept them on my whiteboard. I kept writing them down because I knew I'm going to forget something, and we have to make sure we're processing things on a regular basis. Going on to the next slide, accomplishments for '22. We implemented a software product called Debt Book. This is helping us track our debt service activity. And previously we've had our financial advisor do that work for us. But hopefully this will help us do it ourselves and we don't have to rely so much on the outside financial advisor. But one of the main reasons we got this software, because it also helps us track our lease obligations. There's a new GASB statement 87 that's come online that we have to follow for this fiscal year that is going to affect our financial statements and how we classify leases. And it requires reviewing everything from a regular operating lease, a small operating lease, all the way up to the larger long-term property leases. And those all have to be evaluated for certain provisions and that they help us determine how we're supposed to show them. So we've got this product and the service team behind it that's helping us with that process.
Could you tell us what GASB is for those?
GASB is the governmental, I'm sorry, yes, I know, I'm sorry. Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which dictates to us how we're supposed to account and report issues that affect governments. And you heard Tricia Hopkins refer to them. They established an OPEB statement, which required us to start quantifying how much we're accruing in post-employment benefit liabilities. They did the one for pensions several years before that, where we were just showing what we're paying currently for pensions, but not really recognizing, this is the long-term obligation that we're setting ourselves up for with these pension plans. So this is the board that promulgates all those requirements. And so when they have big ones like this, it's kind of costly and time-consuming for a government of our size to implement. Host compliance, we didn't implement it within the fiscal year, but we finished implementation of host compliance. That's the company it's through Granicus, and they are helping us track our short-term rentals and ensuring that everybody's permitted and paying the occupancy taxes. In December, we did a bond sale, $62.8 million. It was a rather significant one, and we had a major refunding of some water and sewer bonds that resulted in a present value savings of $3.1 million. That's over the long run, cash-wise, that was many more millions of savings. We have, as you know, the Moody's bond rating increased to a AA1. That puts all three of our bond ratings one step below a AAA. We've issued our annual comprehensive financial report. Paige, you and Julie were very instrumental in pulling that together for us. All of my accountants actually participated, but they were the follow through at the end with the big book and pulling that together. We maintained our debt balances during this last year. The only new debt we issued was the debt in December. The year before that, we didn't have any new debt issues because COVID had slowed down our capital program substantially, and we did not need to issue debt. Purchasing solicitation, numerous vendor relations through our RFPs and other methods, and I have another slide that gives some more detail on that. We have a new Public Works Safety Committee. The risk manager worked with multiple divisions in DPW and set up a committee that's trying to improve the safety at these various locations. The risk manager has established a site inspection calendar, ensuring that all of our work sites have been inspected, documenting the issues noticed, and going back for follow-up to ensure that the problems have been remedied. And he also helped establish a modified duty return to work program for those that are on workers' comp, but can work at another job in the interim and provide some services to the city that don't require maybe heavy lifting or other job duties that they had performed on their other job. And helped the Office of Law and our external lawyers to reduce our exposure in our open workers' comp claims. This is a list that I asked Brian to put together. This shows you the number of solicitations, bids, awards that we've processed during the year. including 995 purchase orders. So that's a tremendous amount of work that goes through that division, which only has 3 employees. So you can understand the amount of work that they do. And the other projects that Brian has helped us on is the AMRP, the Burtis House acquisition. He works with, typically with Jim Pittman to look at the BG&E accounting and reporting and billing to make sure it's in line with our requirements and our contract rates to ensure that they're not charging us too much and that we're saving money where we can on the electricity consumption. And he's helped recently with this SP Plus coordination with the changeover in the Park Place management. And they're putting new gate systems in there. So I have 10 goals that I've documented in the budget book. I'm not going, I'll run through these quickly and show you where I think that we've made some accomplishments. My goals and performance measures still need to be reworked because they're a little bit out of line with it. When I read this goal now, it looks like an objective to me. So I haven't yet reformed these in accordance with our work from last summer. So they need to be revised. And so I'm going to go over the goal. We want to maintain timely and accurate accounting records, strengthen, maintain, and monitor internal controls. I've listed my performance measures there. And the ones that I feel that we've made progress on in the last couple years, we're doing reconciliations more frequently and more timely. And we're making sure that the revenue expenditures are recorded in the correct funds and projects. Goal 2 is to provide accurate and timely financial information to city departments and improve our reporting capabilities of Munis, which is the system that everybody works with when they're doing their accounting transactions. The performance measures, we're doing better at getting budget versus actual reports to departments, including capital project reports. We're trying to get them out by the 15th of each month. Since we established this, we've been in compliance several times. When it gets busy, that's when that kind of falls through. Like now, it's a busy time, so April 15th has been missed, but it's almost ready to go out, so we're not too far behind that deadline. And we also have implemented more OpenGov software modules each quarter, but we still have some work to do there. Our third goal, provide accurate and timely billings for utility, CFA, and general billings. We are working more recently on policy and code changes to standardize the application of utility adjustments and their penalties. As you know, I'm hoping to see legislation to allow a waiver of penalties occasionally. That's a big issue with the citizens, that I don't have the authority to do that. And we're doing the credit card, debit card fees that you considered last night, and we're going to try to get those applied to all of our credit card streams. There's 5 different systems in the city processing credit card transactions, and they all use a different third-party biller. So getting that new policy affected on all 5 will take some time, but that's what we're working towards now.
What is CFA? CFA?
It's capital facilities assessment. It's when it's assessed on a property when they first hook up to the system. And it's paid, if it's a developer, they have to pay it up front. If it's an individual property, we can put them on a 30-year payment plan. Our fourth goal, protect the city deposits and maximize our related earnings. Some of the things that I saw we needed to do was to establish some new banking relationships. One of my goals that I haven't done is to put the banking services out for bid. It hasn't been done in a long time. We don't have any major issues with our current provider, but it's always good to put those services out for bid to see if there's some savings you can get. But I have signed, with these new credit card processing companies, we've established relationships with at least 6 other vendors for processing payments that are coming to the city. And we've really been working on closing down all unneeded accounts. We've had several bank accounts that we've closed out, trust accounts related to old bond issues, that type of thing. Our 5th goal is, of course, to improve the efficiency of the finance department operations. Our payroll adjustments and reissues needed per pay period, that's something we've definitely reduced. When I came on board, we were doing those every pay period. There was 2 or 3 or 4 reissues, corrections, but we started to enforce accountability to the departments when they would come forth and ask for a supplemental payroll for someone. And so we've managed to tighten that up, and we only do it when absolutely necessary. And I think that's encouraged the departments to be more careful with their time entry processes. Goal 6, we want to efficiently manage city debt. I feel that we're where we need to be there. As I've talked about before, before I got here, we had done debt issuances at the time you approved the capital budget, but the projects don't move that fast. So we are now borrowing the amount that we feel we need for the next month, the next year, or 18 months worth of capital expenses. So we're looking at what do we think cash is going to go out the door. That's how much we borrow. And also, we were very delinquent previously on the frequencies of drawing down the bond proceeds that we had sold into the projects. And we are now, with Nikki's help, doing that at least every other month, drawing down the bond proceeds and getting those restricted cash amounts back into our unrestricted cash. The 7th goal, we want to provide accurate and timely reporting of grants activities and standardized grants management. Right now, the grants accountant position is vacant, so we're taking a pause there. We also need to better monitor departments' grants adherence to their requirements and understand from a citywide basis who's got grants out there, what are their requirements, and are they following what they're supposed to follow from the federal and state level. There's a lot of grant requirements that are attached to these programs, and I know that the departments on the operating side are familiar with what their grant is allowed to pay for, and they work with the grantor to make sure they're only paying for the things that are authorized. But there's these overarching systems that we have to have in place on the purchasing side, on the control side, and we need to make sure we're monitoring that to ensure we have those in place. We'll talk about that in a few minutes when we talk about personnel. We want to minimize risk for city employees and city property. That's not only good for the city coffers, but it's good for the employees. We don't want them to come to work and worry about being safe and doing their jobs. That's something I feel with both Mary and with Corey in these last few years, we've done a really good job at reducing risk at these city sites. We want to increase efficiency of city spending, and this is on the purchasing side. One of the things that we need to, we have a policy regarding women and minority business enterprise goals, but the difficult thing is figuring out how to implement. We know the vendors that we pay, and are they minority, but we have a lot of big construction contracts. They have subs. We don't often know how those qualify, so we need to find a way to track that and better track that. And I also think we need to find a way to be more proactive during the during the solicitation process, if we're not getting the response, why? Where are those businesses that we can use? And on our last one is to expand the use and enhance accountability for the procurement card program. I feel that one of the things we can do is change the procurement card program so that we assign the cards to individuals, but we have to have tighter controls wrapped around those cards and allow them to be used for more purposes and higher dollar values so that it gives them more flexibility with their purchases. And also we can take a look, and it's not on the slide, but at our policy and whether or not our current dollar limits that require competition and other methods are in line with what they should be, or is it time to increase them to higher levels to allow more flexibility at the department level? That's something we have to evaluate. Moving forward into 23, one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about is a possible reorganization of my staffing, and not only how we report, but adding some positions where I feel that we are lacking. In that regard too, office space is an issue. I know this has been brought up by other departments. Not for the staff we don't have enough space, and trying to expand and add positions is a challenge. And we are Public Works and purchasing and Public Works are have an RFP out for somebody to help us evaluate our space needs and maybe help us look for options on where we could locate. And also part of the charge of that is going to be whether or not we can co-locate with the other three, Gorman, this building, and the 161, I think it is, across the street. So, that's something that has to go hand in hand with this, because the idea of adding staff is great, but right now there's just nowhere they could sit, and my current staff don't have enough space to do what they need to do either. Another goal, we want to get the ACFR out by December 31. That's been a goal since I started. We got close one year, but the COVID has really set us back there and has made us late the last 2 years. And I think with Julie in place as the assistant and heading up that effort, we're in position very well to do that. The accountants have all been helping out with the preparation of the base information that goes into the report, so they're experienced with that, and with that and Julie there as an interim step from my review is definitely going to help us meet that deadline. We need to start paying accounts payable through ACH instead of through physical checks. We're still doing a lot of physical checks. We have the capability. We've taken a couple steps towards testing that system, but it's not completed yet. We also want to get our utility invoices with the capability of going through email instead of sending out a physical paper copy of an invoice. We have that capability in our current system. It's just a matter of getting the assistance we need from IT and our Tyler vendor to put it into place. And they are working on it, so I'm hoping to see that in the next year. We're going to implement our convenience fees and our credit card fees, as we discussed earlier. The GASB 87 lease accounting and reporting requirements. Improvements to OpenGov. OpenGov has several improvements in process that I feel are going to at least help us with the budget process, the budget book process, make it look cleaner, give us more options on what we want to show, plus allowing us to take advantage of some of their other modules that are more citizen outreach modules. And then hopefully with the proper staffing in place, I will be able to step back and start updating and developing finance policies and procedures for all of these things we do, not only your day-to-day, but the special projects and programs that we have here. And as I spoke of, we need grant administration improvements. All right, so this is a picture of how I see the finance department. I've been here now almost 4 years, coming up on 4 years in August, and identify where I think we're missing levels of experience and positions, new positions that we're not doing currently, that we're trying to do it with the existing personnel, and we really need specialized assistance in these areas. And then, if you notice, the yellow boxes are new positions. The green are upgrades of current positions. And then over on the right box in the lower right, I put the priorities, because there's no way we can do all this in 1 year. I wouldn't expect it, and it would be too much to undertake for the department. So what I have in the budget this year are your first 3 bullets on that list. A budget analyst to work under the direction of my budget manager, and to assist with the daily budget duties, which pulls Katie away from bigger, high-level developments during the year when you have to continually process not only the transfer requests, but doing the reporting, tracking the reporting, making sure the departments are adhering to their budget, determining when there's an issue. There's review that can be done on the contracts that I'm currently doing. I see every contract and I look for the available appropriations. That's something that the budget analyst and or the budget manager could do. That doesn't have to be on my plate. The second one are upgrades for senior accountants to budget manager and accounting manager. The roles that those 2 positions are playing are more at a supervisory level and not a singular accounting level. And a new position of a grants administrator. Which, yes, so that position is under the budget manager, and I placed it there because the budget manager would be supervising the grants accountant, And this position I envision as a person to help the operating departments monitor them to ensure they have the overall systems, citywide systems in place to monitor, to adhere to their grant requirements. And on the capital side, we have a lot of capital grants now, and we're getting more with CityDoc. And there's 2 that are coming in for the Stanton Center. And though there is no single person that's designated to not only reach out to the grantor to get the paperwork done, but also to monitor when we can ask for reimbursement on our spending. And what happens is either one of the public works engineers or Ashley in the Office of Law helps pull together those requests, because there's been a couple instances where nobody requested it, and we've almost timed out on a state requirement on when we need to go get the reimbursement, and nobody knew about it. So nobody that's currently here who's in a position to monitor it knew about it. So it almost fell through the cracks, and except for the state notifying us that it was about to time out, we had to rush around and get that reimbursement sent in. So that highlights the fact that there's nobody watching those capital grants to make sure that we're requesting the money timely. Those are big expenditures, and it's important that we get the money back into our coffers as soon as we can. The other 2 roles that I feel are missing, and I'll talk about them here, but like I said, they're a little lower on the priority list, is having another senior accountant in charge of the accounts receivable cycles. The utility, right now we have a billing supervisor that oversees 2 billing, what do we call them? Clerks. That's not really their title, it's accounting associate. And 2 cashiers. But there's other issues at work here, ensuring that all of our receivables are being billed and collected properly. For instance, the pilot arrangements that we have with some of these properties, they're based on a calculation, not their tax bill. So the calculation could be based on their financial information, but we're depending on them to send us the right amount. When nobody's going back to see, did they adhere to, doing what I would call an audit, going out and making sure that we agree with what they calculated they owe us, and that they paid us that amount. Those types of overarching controls are not there on the receivable side now. We have many of those types of agreements that depend on other information, not our own, to determine what's paid. And then eventually another budget analyst, because definitely there's a lot of work that could be done on that side, from a proactive, from a budget projections, long-term projections, regular updating of projections that we just don't have the staff to do now. And an internal auditor. This position is on there, reporting directly to the director. But this would be something that the audit committee would also have to be involved in, because the audit committee is responsible for not only establishing audits, but appointing any kind of internal audit staff that we do. So that's in there, within their charges in the code. So they would have to be involved with that. Okay, so we can move on. Here's our budget summary for both finance operations and the purchasing divisions. The salary and benefits on the finance operations side include those 3 bullets that you just saw, but we've also added a turnover allocation to our department, knowing that there's no way those positions are going to be filled on July 1, both because of space needs and because of the time it will take to list them and review applicants and get people on board. So we've taken a significant turnover adjustment in the budget. And purchasing, no significant changes there. It's still the 3 positions. We might get a little bit of savings when we bring in a new purchasing officer, if we bring in somebody at a lower level. Brian's been here for many, many years and is at the top of the scale. So do we want to go over anything? Let's go back. We'll go, and we've got some slides in here talking about the increases on the other line items, so I'll move forward to those. Here's your pie charts, Alderman Tierney. So this, as you can see, we have a lot of salary and benefits, but we do have a significant amount of contractual services as well, and I will give a breakdown in a minute of what's in there. Supplies and other capital, a little bit of capital outlay, and that's for any standing desk or other office equipment that we need to purchase. And here is the purchasing chart. As you can see, there are 3 employees with just a little bit of contractual service money and supplies. On our contract services detail, if you look at our contractual services, you'll find an account in that detail that's called contract services. It totals $116,000. And here's a list of the services that are included in that $116,000. We'll go to the next one. I hope I'm not moving too fast. There's another account in there that I feel is substantial and needs to be highlighted, not just the contract services. Accounting services totals $346,000. That has a lot more items in there, as you can see. Things that we feel are more accounting related. Our audit services, that is at the rate of our previous audit fee. Right now we're under, I think we're about at 85. We've just put an RFP out for the next year's audit, for the FY22 audit, and we'll be seeing what those bids are coming in. Davenport, as you know, our bank fees, our self-insurance fund actuary is charged here. We've reinstated the audit committee to their original $50,000 allocation. During the last 2 years, we had cut it back to 25. There's our payment for OpenGov, and a few miscellaneous bank fees, our GFOA filing fees for the ACFA review, our new debt book, and our host compliance costs. And some, the Lighthouse hotline, that's the fraud hotline that the audit committee has established. Oops, hold on. All right, so in telling you some of the increases from 22 that were notable on the chart that you saw earlier, I talked about reinstating the $25,000 for the audit committee, and the increase for debt book, $12,500, because we purchased it within FY22, and Granicus as well, because this was purchased in 22. On the legal services side, we have a $9,600 increase from the Carl Harris firm. They do our collections on the utility side, on delinquent accounts. And we have restored $7,000 to our supplies budget as a restoration of something that was reduced in the previous years because of the COVID restrictions. All right, this is the big division. I won't spend a lot of time here. I think we've kind of covered this, and this detail is in the budget book. This is financed unallocated, everything that doesn't really belong in a department that's handled by us. And then if you, as we finish this, you can ask me questions on any of that detail that you need to. We take responsibility for the health insurance fund. It's a combination of help from HR and our department, but this is the cost of providing health care to both retirees and employees. You may remember that when we set the budget, we set it high enough to pay both retiree and employee costs, but at the end of the year, we actually moved the retiree amounts over to the OPEB fund. So the FY21 actuals that's been closed out is reflective of those transfers out. So the amounts appear to be lower, but we've moved the retiree amounts out. Self-insurance fund, that is the activity around the workers' comp claims, general liability claims. The revenues all stem from transfers from the general fund and some other miscellaneous revenues that we get back if we share liability with another insuring company. We'll put the reimbursement into this fund. The salary and benefits, we allocate some of the Office of Law time, salary and benefits over here according to their timesheets, what they're spending on the workers' comp claims. And most of the cost, of course, is the $2 million for the claims costs. The next one is the sprinkler fund. We've talked about this a bit lately with the new legislation. I have the projected revenue only includes what we think we're getting on payments, and that was set on our existing loans. But I have a new loan that's going out in the near future of $51,000 because the application was submitted before your legislation was approved, so it's not subject to the cap, and it's going to eat into that balance a bit. So, you know, the council will want to consider if we need to put some extra funding there. Okay. We talked about the enhancements that are in the budget and the amounts. I wanted to list the amounts here. The grant administrator, the budget analyst, and the upgrades for current positions, and the extra $25,000 that we're adding to the audit committee. On our long-term goals, you know, it's always been a goal of full staffing levels to get to what I've shown you on our chart. and co-location of the staff. Having purchase, we should all be together. The purchasing staff should be here too. We may be able to find some efficiencies if we could co-locate. Complete policies and procedures for all finance tasks. I mentioned that earlier. And I've touched on some of these, the automated AP payments through ACH instead of checks, an electronic billing system. I would like to, as much as possible, standardize the third-party processing services. Having 5 providers is very time-intensive, and we get 5 batches. You know, each one sends their own batch of collections every day. So it's a lot of work for the accountants to try to process those batches, get them posted, and reconcile them to the bank information. We want to go paperless. We are partially paperless, but we're not as close as we should be. We're still using a lot of paper there. I want to streamline the payroll processing in some way by using an internal or external providers, and also try to eliminate paper checks, because we still got a few people that use the paper checks. Maximize, I talked about the P cards and looking at the purchasing policies. I talked about that before. And robust use of the budget software, which I also mentioned. That would be able to not only give us real-time reports, but assist us in making quick, long-term budget projection adjustments and maximize citizen involvement. I think that might be it. That's the end of my formal presentation. I'm sorry it went longer than I thought it was going to be. Let me get my water.
Definitely no need to apologize, Jody. I have probably 2 general questions and 2 specific questions. First, let me say, you should be really proud of where you are with the department and what you have produced. One thing I've observed, having gone to finance committee meetings before, is we've had some flurry of revised pages, and in the past, you know what I'm talking about. In this budget, we haven't gotten that.
We've had a couple.
Yeah, I know, but
not as many. Yeah.
But that just shows you what Miss Donnelly's addition has done.
Right.
Tricia deals with people. You deal with money, and that involves, risk control and leveraging. So I really appreciate you taking a hard look at what's going to optimize your department to do that. General question on the interfund, the catch-all. Is that typically, what's the label for it?
Finance non-allocated?
Non-allocated, that. So when I look at finance, in the general budget, it's 20-something% or something. What do other cities do? What do they do with that?
So I can only tell you from the county, because I worked at the county for many years, and we had something very similar. I'm not sure it's exactly the same terminology, but there is a division within that's under the control of the finance department that has all these big ticket type items that really don't belong in a particular fund, transfers to other funds for insurances. Contingencies are typically there, capital interfund transfers. Again, this compensation contingency is whenever you're redoing your union contracts, you may see something like that on there. And it's just really a catch-all division for something that doesn't fit into a departmental bucket. And for the most part, we're in control of all that. The debt service payments go through our department, and we have, several different bond issues and equipment loan issues that we're paying on. So Nikki has to keep track of those, and when they're due, and we can't miss one of those payments, or it can be seen as a big red flag when government's not paying their debt. So we control all these and initiate, like Pedro will initiate some of these transactions between funds, the transfers at the beginning of the year or during the year, depending on what they're for.
Okay. Another general question is internal or external, outsourcing. You talked about outsourcing.
The payroll.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
that-
that's, one of the things that I noticed when I got here is for the size of our organization, we're doing all of our payroll internal. An organization this size would typically outsource their payroll. We try, but we have a very robust Munis module for payroll. And it's kind of all tied into the rest of the system. And we tried doing some outsourcing to ADP for both paying the payroll checks, because they had a pay card system and it would help automate some of that. And we also we're having them do our tax reporting for us, the quarterly 941s, the annual W-2s. So we tried implementing that a couple years ago, and it wasn't a full implementation of ADP services. We can't stop the Munis process. We have to go through the Munis process for payroll anyway, and then send stuff to ADP to get done. So it's not really saving us time, and we've had some real issues with sending data over and getting the reports right on the other side. So, that we may be terminating that at some point in the near future, and then just rethinking how we want to do it. And I don't know if that's bringing in somebody to help us with payroll internally to help us fill some of those roles, but just coming in periodically. What you found with the Munis process is you have to actually go through the process of creating the payroll checks and printing checks, and that to create the file, send to ADP. Well, then we just have to shred a bunch of things. So it's a waste of a lot of paper and resources, and it seems like a double process. And the conversion of the data from our system to theirs has not been smooth, and we've had ongoing problems with that as well. So that's not going to be, and we probably won't keep that relationship going much longer. And then just trying to think of other options for that.
Two more, this one, it's probably for purchasing. Why don't we have an MBE requirement in our code or a policy? It sounds like we don't have one in our city's policy like a contractor would have. This is it.
So
Wouldn't it be advantageous to have
we
that?
do have a policy.
Okay.
And Brian, do you want to come up and speak to the policy? We have a policy. I don't recall if it has a percentage in it.
Right.
But what's hard is, what do you do if you can't find, how do you find the ones to fit those
Okay.
requirements?
So it's
And
more of a
go ahead
best
and speak
effort.
to.
See, we didn't want you to go, Brian, without talking to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we are recently, like the county, we're gender neutral as far as the bidding process and requirements on MBE. They recently changed. They put in some sort of code requirement. We haven't followed suit as of yet. We do put in requirements when we have federal or state funds that have established goals. Like when we spend transportation money, for ADOT, they'll have specifics where they go through and make a target. That's part of our bid package. We did create a policy, and we do more outreach now. We do, all of our formal bids are established and published on eMaryland Marketplace. And the eMaryland Marketplace sends out, blast email of our bid notice to any vendor that is in the category that we select. So if it's a construction project, or, we'll select a construction category, and it'll go out to hundreds, thousands of vendors. We also scour the MDOT minority business directory for potential people to reach out directly to. We have done some targeted purchases for some smaller things that are under formal where we just reach out to minority folks to try and build the business.
So do you, let me ask it this way, would it be helpful to you if the council developed more of an overall policy, at least, using the language, not having the percentages so much, but, using the language of best effort and just so that it's not lost. I see what you're saying. Some of the money that we get requires it. Some of the projects require it. Some of our contractors require it. But like I think I read in the county, they have it in their code. Is that something you would recommend that we work on language to put in our city code?
It would put more burden on staff. So
What's that, Brian?
it would put more burden on our staff, which is 3
Sure,
people.
right, yeah.
So there would be some considerations there as to workload.
Okay. Okay. All right. And my last question, I don't want to steal your thunder as far as your idea about grants, but.
Excuse, I just want to follow up on that before we get off that topic. I think it would be good to find somebody who's an expert that's done that, taken a policy and added the minority participation and figured out ways to, how did they do it? How did they target people so that it's not the staff trying to figure out how to do it, that there's some resource we can go to say, how do we search for these? How do we make it work? What are some things that we can do in our policy, in our code, and then what are some resources to try to find firms?
Well, because we have some big dollar items, in Hillman and City Dock, and
we put those into the contract with that. We requiring some level of participation when they select their subcontracts.
Right. Okay, I was
going to just add on, when the county put their policy in, they did a disparity study, and that was, I don't know, $500,000 to do the study.
I got you.
We have had some contact with the lawyer that did their kind of servicing work to establish, goals for certain areas. But we haven't progressed any further than that.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to defer to Alderwoman O'Neill on the grant position and leveraging that, et cetera. So do you want to go first? Do you want to go on your questions?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I appreciate all the information that you all have supplied us with today. There was nobody.
I know it's not really that is interesting as serving the public and stuff, but it is quite a workload.
Well, it's what runs our city.
I mean, when you get the numbers going and the terms and stuff, I can see the eyes glazing over. I'm like, it's not, what we do is not sexy.
No. As Alderwoman Tierney suggested, we've been talking a lot about grants and the grants position as we've been going through all of the presentations. And I think that we would all agree that a grants administrator would be a great thing for our city. It seems now that there are departments that focus on departmental grants and some people that focus on some other grants, but it would be really great if there was one place that we could go to find out about grants, the grant writing process, the rules and regulations and the reporting on that. So I myself am 100% in support of that position. And I'm hoping that position would sort of mold into the ability for that person or maybe that section of the department to really help some of the other departments in their grants.
Right.
Alderman Gay asked yesterday about, to the police department, about more grants.
Right, and they're limited on their resources as well. And when I started to envision this position, I understand that too. but it can't do, there were certain things it could do. The things that I mentioned that I'd like to do is the capital side and the kind of like have a database of here's all of our grants, here's the requirements of this grant, and who's making sure that these are being, it's kind of that control point. And some departments need help with their operating grants, but that's a bigger job than just one person. That's why I didn't include that kind of thing in there, is that helping departments with their operating grants and the submissions of they're usually monthly or quarterly reports. That can be a big effort. So that's more than a one-person job. That's
why I kind of called it a department eventually.
Yeah, I can see that it could become bigger with more roles there, but to start out, that's what I see that we need the most. Most of the departments are really outgoing with their seeking of grants, and they do their own reporting, and I know it's a hassle for them. So I did not really, I didn't know until our discussion from yesterday the police were limiting what they were doing because they had so many restrictions on the resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's something that I think for future we'll continue to develop and look into. That would be great. I have a strange question about the Gmail, and I know that it comes into operating costs in every department, and it fluctuates pretty far from one end to the other. Can you tell me what that's
I think it's based, so what happened was it used to be an MIT, right? MIT was paying that whole cost, but we decided this year to allocate it out to the departments, and it's based on number of employees, right? So the departments with few employees have a smaller charge, and the larger departments are going to have a much larger charge. But it is a per person. Is it a standard rate?
I believe so.
Okay.
Per agreement, per license.
Okay.
Per license, so it fluctuates with the number of people in the department.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. My third and final question goes back to that women-owned minority businesses. And I've had a couple of people reach out, especially in the sprinkler legislation, asking if the city has a list of suggested vendors. And I was wondering if that was something that's public.
Yeah, you can certainly ask. We do maintain lists that all the minority vendors are coded in Munis, the ones that we use. So we do generate that list, and we've tried to also do it by city and county vicinity as well.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to have a copy of that, or shown where it is, where I could find it.
I think the fire, sorry to interrupt, but I think I asked for that, and I have it from the fire marshal's office, that they produced it.
At least for the sprinkler?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Those are all my questions, but I do appreciate all of your time. Not only are you sitting here in front of us today, but every day.
Every day.
I do appreciate that.
Katie and I.
And we look forward to the different color socks.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you. Once again, a department that touches everyone, and it is because you function so well that everybody else functions well. So thank you, all of you, for what you do.
I have a very good staff that does most of this work on a daily basis.
Well, leadership matters also. So thank you. Just a few questions. Where are the trusts housed? You mentioned that there is an account where, and I didn't write the page down, I'm sorry, but you mentioned trust. Do we have a number of trusts?
So when we're talking about the pension assets are kept in a trust, and the assets are kept at Wilmington Trust. It's a part of the M&T Bank system. And we funnel money in with contributions, and they pay the monthly retiree cost. I also mentioned there's an OPEB trust, and we handle a lot of the health insurance payments, but the money that's being invested is in a trust also at Wilmington Trust, and it's done through MACO. We're in a investment trust with MACO and other counties in the state of Maryland that are participating in there. And then when I talked about Park Place, I also talked about the Park Place Trust. That trust was formed when they did the TIF out there, the Tax Increment District financing, and there were county bonds and there were city bonds as a part of that arrangement. And when all that was established, they formed trusts. And who's the trustee that handles the Park Place money? Wilmington too? Wilmington, again, handling that trust. But we're not in control of that. We have to submit paperwork to say, we order you, trustee, to pay this bill. We order you, please pay us our amount, the net amount out of the trust. And what's happened since then is the city debt has been refinanced in another form, so that's no longer a part of that trust. But the county debt related to the improvements is still outstanding. Some of that's still outstanding. And so that's the debt service that the county taxes are going, the county taxes that relate to those properties are going into a trust, and they're paying the debt service from that trust.
So do we have a list of all of the trusts?
And not in one place. We could pull that together for you. And so those are the main ones that I talked about. Those are the only ones.
I think that would be helpful. I kind of feel like there's lots of money out there in different places.
And then when we do like refunding, if we refund old bonds, we have to set aside money in a trust to pay the old bonds off. But as of now, when we do new issues, we don't put the money in for the new issues in a trust. We put them at PNC at our bank in a separate account to track their spending.
So when we received the, 3.1 million when we sold the bonds?
So we received more like 62 million. Part of that was refunding old bonds. That piece would have gone to the trust to pay it off, Bank of New York. And then the other for the new money, we call it new money because it's going to pay for new capital project improvements. We're taking that in-house. We're putting it in a separate account at PNC, one for each bond issue. And then we draw out of that account as we spend the money in the capital projects. We draw it and put it in our main account.
So do we put, and I'm looking for the slide that mentioned the 3.1 million.
Slide 4.
Yes, and so that is the present value savings, meaning it's just like refinancing your mortgage and saying, over time, I'm saving this amount by refinancing.
Okay, so
that's the savings, and it's the present value of the savings. The dollars each year actually add up to much more than 3.1 million, but when you apply a present value to it, it's 3.1 in today's dollars.
Okay, so I guess my question is whether the savings would be attributable to the trust. Does that make sense?
So no, that's a way of calculating reduced expenses in future years. So it's actually a calculation of what we're not paying that we would have paid.
Okay, so it's not actual.
So it's not actual cash money.
Okay, thank you. The HACA, we've been giving them $80,000 annually. Is that covering the inspections?
So it started, the first year it started was pre-pandemic, and I can't remember what the total transactions were that year. They were in the tens of thousands, but not 80,000. And remember, it's just an entry on our side. We recognize inspection fees and as a revenue, and we recognize an expense as a grant out to HACA for that, because we're granting them the money to cover their inspection fees. The COVID, when the pandemic hit, we stopped a lot of the site visits because of the contact. They weren't going out and doing the inspections. So that stopped for a year. And there was one fiscal year, it might have been 21, where we didn't have any. But now they're picked up again, and I don't know how we're doing for 22, but I know they're picked up again, and I don't know at what rate we're doing them. That's a planning and zoning.
So does that amount carry over, or we?
No, we just set it up every year as an expense for like a grant expense, and then we'll take in the revenues on the planning and zoning permit revenue side.
Okay. GASB 87. I remember it was GASB 15 when it started or something
Oh,
like that.
I might be able to go back further than that. Yeah.
And I just have a note because the chairwoman asked about that. Federal government requiring us to be able to pay those future expenses.
So, yeah, so the GASB, just clarify that the GASB is not a part of the federal government. It is a board that's established by the accounting community. You know, the really, really smart accounting brains are up there sitting in a committee, and they decide what's missing in government accounting and what we need to change to make our reports better, to make our accounting more accurate and more helpful to not only internal sources, but external sources like people that are buying your bonds and people that you're sending your reports to read your reports. So they make these rules that we have to follow. And yes, I mean, GASB, they started from 1 and now we're up into, I'm sure we're well into the 90s now. 87 was issued many years ago. So they just keep going.
Well, and you're on top of it, so that's
Yeah,
important.
and there's an accounting standards board that addresses private companies as well, the FASB. So
you mentioned space. I'm not sure whether all of DPW is going to be moving when the new facility is completed.
the administrative group is staying here.
Okay.
It's staying in Gorman Street until there's some other
So
arrangement.
that's not going to help you out any.
No.
Okay.
Nobody's moving out of that building, and they're pretty full over there too.
The facility on Chinkapin is going to be maintained also?
They're moving.
Okay.
No, we'll be stopping that lease. We'll be terminating that lease once they move over to the new facility.
And that's not an option? Maybe not for you guys, but
I
for
don't know.
somebody else.
I've never been to that space. I'm not sure what it looks like. But what we're trying to do is, the whole idea was, we're not sure what we need in space. We know we'll and I don't know if Brian wants to speak to it and the process we've been through so far to evaluate what we need.
Well, ADOT will stay at Chinkapin. The utilities division will be moving to.
Were you talking
the
about
DPW facility on
the water and
No,
sewer?
I know. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
ADOT's garage facilities will stay. The
Yeah.
transportation is on Chinkapin. We also have the utilities division on Chinkapin. That will move into the new building.
That will be moving?
That will be moving to the
Okay.
new building, yes.
So the question is, do we keep that space or do we continue to lease it and put somebody else in there?
I think that'll be determined by the study that's going to occur.
Okay. We have to have it on our radar. Thank you. Internal auditor, your request for an internal auditor. If I remember correctly, we created the audit committee instead of adding a position. And does it not suffice?
I don't think I think that at one point in time, they did create an accountant in finance that was going to do audit roles, but they soon moved that over to help with the accounting side. So that was before my time, and that role was sort of lost there. And then the audit committee, though, would not be the same as an internal auditor. I don't know, Ross, if you want to speak to that.
Okay, my last question, I think. What of your priorities, I think we're on page 17, you have your new positions in yellow and your upgrades in green.
Yep.
What was funded in the mayor's budget?
The first, if you look at that box on the right side, the first 3 bullets.
Okay.
The second group of 3 was not.
So if we were to try to fund all 6 of your requests, we would need,
A lot more space.
well, a lot more space, but a lot more funding also.
Yeah.
What would it cost to increase your department by those 3 positions? And you don't have to tell me now.
Yeah. I can try to calculate something for you. It might roughly double what we have in the other 3. It depends. I have to look at the grades. See, and I'll mention that the budget analyst and the upgrades and the grants administrator have not been graded yet. That's another process we have to go through with the Civil Service Commission to figure out where they would be on the grading scale and what the duties are. We've got some job duties lined up, and Tricia is helping us with those, but right now she's got a lot going on, so, with the budget, so.
Well, obviously, though, you had some projected funding for those 3 positions that allowed the mayor to
I
put
can
them in
try
his
to,
budget.
because I, in my mind, think I know what they're gonna be graded at, but I'm not the official determinant. So we did come up with some estimates, and so I would be glad to provide you with what I would think. It's just that I know it's not, even as a department, if we got all that funding this year, we wouldn't be able to fulfill it all because it's too much to do on the recruiting side, switching duties around. I'd rather take it in stages, but.
So are you saying you're satisfied with?
With the 3. Yeah,
three?
not only from a funding perspective and the space issues, but the fact that we're a smallish department and trying to take on, 6 or 7 new things all at the same time is gonna be a commotion.
Okay. And I was going to ask you your total staffing, but it's on page 61 in the budget book.
Yeah.
So you have 24 positions for
With the 3,
23.
with the 2 new positions, the upgrades are upgrades of existing positions.
Okay, so from 22 to 24. That's my last question. Thank you very much.
Let the record show, I think that.
And one of the other things that I will come forward with is, you talked about ladders, the career ladders. I'm very interested in career laddering the accountants and my accounting associates, because we have them defined right now, but they can't ladder up into the next one. I would like to do like accountant 1, 2, 3, and 4, and accounting associate 1, 2, 3, and 4. As they develop skills, then they move up in grade. Otherwise, they don't have, once they get to the top, they even though they're well-skilled, they don't have any advancement options, and would give them something to look for. So that's one of the things I'm going to do as well on the career ladder side, but.
I think we would appreciate seeing your reorganization.
Okay.
Can I just add too, since I've been here, I think Jody's promoted 6 individuals within our department as well.
Well, congratulations.
No, I have, they're a really good staff.
Well, like I started out by saying, you all touch everyone, and no one could function well without the work you do. So thank you. Katie, you haven't said
you.
much today, but you've been saying a lot through this whole process.
Yeah, she is.
So appreciate you. I don't know what we did without a budget analyst.
I don't know how they ever managed what
I
they
know.
had on their plates. When I
So-
first came here and they had their long list of things to do, and I'd say, what's on your list? And then Nikki Pletzer would just go down her list, and I'm like, I don't know how you're managing, even keeping track of everything.
So thank you.
Thank
Madam Chair?
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever heard a department head say no to a staff. No, I think it's great
You can say,
management.
I can say yes, and you can put it in the budget, but the thing is that funding's not gonna go anywhere if I can't manage it. We have, I have issues trying to manage everything as much as I can now, all the balls in the air at the same time. Trying to get
was
everything
just-
done is almost impossible,
Yeah,
but.
I was just making light of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do I have to start by showing my socks?
They're not
Or lack
Argyle.
thereof.
You haven't worn them since sock burning.
On slide 3, you talk about the AMRP. We had a resolution before the council, but have we subsequently gotten a concession agreement?
It's still in the final stages of negotiation. We're close. We're having our last final few meetings here. It seems like, just when you think it's almost over, it keeps going, but we're working out the final points of the agreement. And that's not in my, we've got an external legal specialist that's helping us with that.
So are we starting the Hillman Garage work on a handshake? Is that?
If I may, I asked the same question, and the city manager responded that they are acting under the
Pre-development agreement.
So
Yeah.
contractually, we're okay.
So we added an amendment to the
a while.
pre-development agreement that will cover the demolition process as well, so that we don't have to, even if everything's not ironed out with the concessionaire agreement, that we can move forward with the first stage.
On slide 4, you mentioned host compliance. I've asked John Manessa, I'll ask you. The last update we saw was a report for February of 2021. Is there information available updating the number of short-term rentals that we're seeing?
Yeah, we can get that for you at any date. And you can even go onto their website and just open it up, and they'll say how many that you currently have, that they know, that they believe are renting. And then how many are in compliance. Here we have to be careful because there's certain requirements that don't apply to those who are just renting during Naval Academy graduation and special events like that. And they may be renting on the sites. They don't have to be permitted, but they still have to pay their occupancy tax. So it gets, when they say they're not compliant, they may say they're not permitted, but it may be that they don't have to be permitted. It's so we have to kind of sift through that and see who's actually non-compliant. But we can get that for you.
Okay, I would or give me the, when you say go to the website,
So
is it
you'd
the
have to
city?
have like a password, stuff to get into
Yeah,
the system.
right,
So I don't think you have access to
All right.
that yet.
I appreciate that. Last,
Yes, we'll figure it out. That would be something that Julie will help you with.
last question is on slide 27, has to do with the self-insurance fund. I'm looking, we had to replenish the self-insurance fund because of the consent decree, but would I be able to see that activity in here?
So what we do, when you'll see it in the net expenses year over year. And what happened in '22, because we've replenished it in '21, and then the actuary looks at all the outstanding claims and then tells us for '22 what we need to put in there, we actually were able to, actually it was in '21 that we, right, so, in '20, we made an allowance for that. In '21, we actually reduced our reserves because we paid it in '21. And if you look at the FY '21 column there, you see 0 in the expense column. That's because we were adjusting our claims so much that we actually had negative expenses to get them back to where they need to be. But that's also a product of not just that one case. We've been doing really well with the workers' comp claims and bringing those down, and that's Corey's work along with the Office of Law and our external administration and external legal help that we get to try to bring those under control and reduce those liabilities.
What I'm concerned about is when we heard from the Office of Law, we saw there's $3 million of additional lawsuits pending.
So that will come up as we close this year and we go to the self-insurance actuary and they have those new claims on there. We may very well see a big bump back up for the next year as well. So we'll just have to wait and see how that works, and we adjust the liability accordingly. This fund actually has a significant fund balance there in cash, so that the worry wouldn't be that we wouldn't be able to pay something. And I'd say that not knowing how big this settlement would be, but there's a significant amount of cash sitting there. So it's mostly like just trying to keep up with it and make sure the cash that's sitting there is enough for what they estimate to be the future claims.
All right, thank you. That answers my question and my concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Gay, can I go before you this time? Okay,
Alderman
you.
Bindle Charles.
thank you. A couple of questions, several questions. Number one, you indicated that there's some property across from the Waterworks Park
Yeah.
that we had not been collecting from. When did we stop and when did we start, and can we go back and get
So, no, we're all caught up. But what's happened is, and I think it's happened more than once, and we got, so at some point, once we got some notification from them that they wanted to, change the ownership of the building. And when they do that, they have to come to us and ask for permission. So then, or some kind of makeup of the ownership. And then I said, what's this? And then we went to find out that they hadn't paid their ground rent in 2 or 3 or 4 years. And so what we then investigated to find that the same thing happened several years before, where they hadn't paid in a while, but they notified us that something was going on. So then we collect all the back months, and it's not a tremendous amount, it's not millions of dollars or anything, but still. So then that told me we got to put them in the general billing system, that every year we send them a bill for it, or get them in there so we know when they haven't paid us. And we issue the bill. So hopefully we've got that under control now and it won't happen
I
again.
thought maybe that was
And I was surprised because it's not in the city, it's in the county.
Well, we won't ask any more questions. On slide number 2, next slide, I think it is. I see down in the AIPPC, you have capital improvements, you have a comma after that.
No.
Is that more to be added to that box?
So that comma doesn't belong there. And I had, when I was looking through here, even now, and before, I was checking and I found some typos that I corrected on my version, but
I was just wondering if there were more.
No, I stretched the box out to see if there was something down there that was after the comma that didn't get in the box, so.
Okay, I'm glad we talked about the women and minority-owned business enterprises.
Yeah.
Space. Do you think there might be some space at the new DPW campus?
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
they're putting a lot of staff over there, and yeah, I would. And now the salt barn is over there, so I don't know that they have much room to expand for office space. I know.
Just trying. Now I have a really stupid question regarding supplies and working from home. Do any of our employees get reimbursed for buying supplies at home if they were doing COVID? So at COVID, there was a year when most people worked at home most of the time. And I only addressed the issue when people would ask, but when they said they needed paper or something that they were doing at home, I say, when next time you come to the office, take some with you. So that's how I hopefully solve that. I mean, they have their work laptops. They were working off a platform. What was it called? The platform. Yeah, Amazon Workspace. A VPN is another way you can get into, but the Amazon Workspace was easier for most. So we got the equipment out to them. If they need a paper, I said grab a ream when you come into the office next, and then and use it from home. And same thing for all the supplies and stuff that they would ask for. Not very many people brought it to my attention. I mean, there's nothing you can do about the cost of whatever electricity or something they use, Right.
but I don't know how to track that. But we still. So after the pandemic that we came all back to work, we continued the work from home policy, but I structured my own. It's up to the department head. I structured my own based on the level of the independent work of the person. That's, the levels, based on the levels. And because the lower levels are more dependent on the work that's here, and the more independent they get, the more options they have for working from home. But we have an established schedule, and that seems to be working okay.
Okay, great. Mr. Snyder, question. You indicated that the county did a study that cost $500,000 as far as minority contractors. Is there any way we can use their information that they got to our benefit?
Only if they'll share it.
Have we asked?
No.
Maybe we can.
Well, I think we did, actually. I have to go back and search my cobwebs up there. And
Because Mr. Pete Hill, who's now in charge of the minority diversity department over there, he might be willing to share it with us.
I recall, I think David Gerald did request it, and he did get it. I took a run at it first from my counterpart over there, and wasn't successful. But I think David got it.
Okay, great. That would be good, because I mean, we can just pull out what might be city, but even using county, and we can make that determination.
I was also going to tag on to your question about reimbursement. Anybody that's working from home is indirectly reimbursed with their time and not having to pay for gas and commute. So
True. Thank you. Makes sense. As far as the grants administrators or any grants people, I would assume that we can do some kind of cost benefit analysis when it comes to hiring 2 or 3 people based on how much money we can pull in.
Right, and so what I had devised with this grant administrator, because they're going to be working a lot on the CIP grants, my plan is to reimburse the general fund for that position from either capital projects or the grants that they're monitoring. It gets a little touchy because some grants won't allow overhead expenses. So, we'll have to see what kind of grants we're managing and where we can pull the reimbursement from. But it is our concept that we're going to reimburse the general fund for those expenses. So net, that expense doesn't impact the general fund.
The other thing is too, I mean, based on this year, I guess it is, taking those, for example, Gmail and pulling that and giving that back to each department, is that possible for doing it for different departments when it comes to a grants person? I mean, say OEM, they've got their own setup, but someone else may say, I could really use it and pitch in a certain percentage toward that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what we'll have to do, evaluate who we're giving the help to and whether those grants can reimburse for some of the costs.
2% administrative, I think it is, or something like that.
Yeah, some of them have a set administrative overhead percent that you can charge to the grant without having to justify. It's just a standard percent.
I remember that.
Sometimes it's more like 10%. I mean, it's not a small number.
I remember that from AACPS.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I'd like to thank you all so very much. I mean, Ms. Dickinson, Ms. Connolly, you all are always the front-facing folks here and have done a magnanimous job, but you have obviously a wonderful, wonderful team, and from the front to the back, as far as physically, I mean, when I go in there, everybody's always wonderful and very accommodating and extraordinarily helpful. But thank you all so very much for what you do.
Alderman Gay, questions?
I'll be quick because I know we're already late. As it relates to Goal 9, which we've discussed already, Goal 9, which was your diversity.
Oh, Goal 9, okay, okay.
So we did meet on May the 7th, 2021. It was Stephen Wright, David Gerald, Alderwoman Pendell Charles, Sally Nash, Colette Holt, Hope Stewart, Lynn Farrow, Alderwoman Finlayson, myself, and the city attorney. And whoever, and Brian. I was like, because it didn't have your name, it just said BDS. And we did discuss the minority business participation plans or initiatives or however you want to organize it. And they said very clearly, we need $500,000. Colette Holt, actually, who was the attorney that worked with the county. And the city at the time told me, we aren't prepared to put that money forward to continue with the program. I think what pisses me off, though, is that we've been arguing for this issue since I've been here, and it'll be 4 years in July. I know Alderwoman Finlayson and Pendell Charles have obviously argued for it since they've been on the council, and I just can't understand why we can't seem to get it done. Again, DC, they have a fabulous program. It's actually written into their code, which I tried to do as well. But
what was that organization?
DC, Washington, DC.
Okay.
I met in 2019 with the city manager, and we tried to get something written in the code as well, but it was suggested that we shouldn't do it, that we should leave it up to the individual departments, because as suggested, it could be it could be difficult for staff. And so I just don't know how we get past that and how we really create equity in a city that, as mentioned last night, has not been kind to its African American and minority communities, in a city where we continue to see the wealth disparity grow year after year. that worries me, and particularly when we're handing out millions of dollars in these contracts for, in particularly like Hillman Garage, which is written in the contract. I still to this day don't have faith that it will be followed through on, maybe to the level that we'd like. And so how can we support? Do we put the $500,000 in to allow for this study? How can we get to the next level to really, really assist communities financially? I think that's at the core of what we're really pushing for in this budget, and I appreciate the committee for making that a focus for all the departments.
So this is a time when I would appreciate the city manager being here, because that's a higher level decision, but that's a proposed amendment you could make to the budget. I'm not really sure, I wasn't in the discussions on what the disparity report, what they looked at, how they evaluated it, and it would be interesting to see what they found in other jurisdictions to see, what kind of value it might be for us.
Yeah, I'll follow up with David, and I'll CC you on it as well. Maybe we can start that back up just before the amendments are due.
Okay.
Because I think that's important. That kind of leads into my next question. I was shocked to find out today that we have investments in Russia.
Oh, so that would be indirectly through the pension, the police and fire pension plan. We work with a lot of investment managers, and they pull together funds that have a lot of different investments in them. And so what she was talking about was that, you have a fund that has 200 or 300 different investments in it. There may be a couple in there that are from those areas, because some of them are an international fund that would focus on some of those other countries. But those are the ones that it's hard to isolate those pieces as to what is in those areas. And now selling them might be hard, like she said.
And I don't have any problem or blaming anyone at all, because I actually found out that New York's police department had $52 million invested in Russia, Russian assets as well. And so it's common. My question, though, is if we can manage to do that, can we put some of our funding, city financing into a black bank?
So tell me what that is. And are you talking about like a pension investment, that there's funds
an investment account, or we maybe just put cash assets into a black bank so that they are able to get into a space where they're working with a city government and maybe investing dollars down the road? Is that something that's possible? I think, if I'm not mistaken, Greensboro, or I'll get the exact city for you, in South Carolina, did a similar thing where they took, this was, during the George Floyd stuff and all of that in 2020, they took dollars that they've had in historically white banks and institutions like Bank of America and moved them to black-owned banks, which there are a few, but there are some. There's one in Baltimore.
Harbor Bank.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
If I may, though, I think it's an opportunity, Alderman Gay, when Director Dickinson mentioned you were writing an RFP for bank services.
Oh, yeah, so banking services. Every few years you should go out and solicit your services to see if you can get a better a price is usually the goal, but maybe we include that as part of the goal to try to include minority-owned banking businesses.
That would be amazing. And it goes a long way. Again, I think, funny, I love Nancy Pelosi. She was saying the other day, the Republicans, they used to say, the saying is the economy. What is it? The economy stupid. She says it's the paycheck, genius. That's what the American people want. They want, economic opportunities. And I think that's a way for us to, help them out with that, is through our procurement process, through sharing our finances within, minority-owned banks. So that's important. I know you all have been working on that. And so just two last questions. Page 24, contingency. It says that it's up to about $400 $200,000, but last night after the amendment we passed, I seen in the fiscal note it said 205,000.
So, yeah, so it started out the year, I think, at 410,000, and we've used it for a few purposes during the year, and now it's down to around 200,000.
And at the beginning of the fiscal year, are we replacing what was lost, or is it?
No, we just reset it, the appropriation level to 410,000,
Okay.
and then as we have needs for it. I mean, there's times, I'm sure, when we have bad winters where there's nothing left at the end of the year because of the need for snow clearing and hiring contractors to clear the roads, but.
And then lastly, the procurement card, which would basically give departments access to purchase.
So we have a procurement card program.
Okay.
And it's devised so that on the card, it's got the department's name. So when the department.
Where's ours? The city council's.
You have a. I know somebody here that knows where that card is. So it's managed by your administrative person, and I don't know if she keeps it or if it's in our office. Some of them, we keep them in the office, and when they need it, they come get it and use it and bring it back.
I'm familiar.
Other departments have, are retaining theirs in their department, and, but the problem is different people are using the same card, and if something were purchased and there was a question about that purchase, you don't always know who's the one who used it, because the number's out there with a lot of different people. And when you have a card program that actually would be a city card, but it would have their name on it, an employee's name, then they're the ones responsible for that card. So you know if it was used for something inappropriate, you know who to go to get the support for it.
Awesome. I'll save my last question for once we get to community grants at some point in the budget process. This has been great. Obviously, we came in at the same time in 2019, so I've been with you the whole 4 years. And I really do trust you with the budget as well as you, Katie. I mean, every year I think you put together the best budget possible for our city. Now, we make a couple of amendments, sometimes not even in our best interest, but that's the process. And so I
That's the
obviously
process.
appreciate you all. Definitely.
Yeah, the budget appropriations are the responsibility of the mayor and the council to set, and we facilitate it with all the materials.
And open government's great.
Okay, I see people, I
Thank you for the lesson.
see people fidgeting and using their cell phones, and the attention span is is waning.
Yeah.
But before I close, does, Corey, do you want to say anything back there, or no?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, all right, just wanted. All right, well, thank you very, very much for what you do and what we put you through.
Oh, that's all right. That's my job.
And tomorrow we have a big day, because I have DPW and enterprise rate increases. So that's full schedule.
Madam Chair, may I take the liberty to say thank you to Mr. Snyder?
Oh.
Mr. Snyder has been
Yes.
our sole, he has been our sole procurement department for at least the 15 years I've been sitting here. And so, you know.
How many years, Brian?
I had my
Thank you enough.
34th anniversary 2 weeks ago.
44th anniversary?
34.
Well, almost. I had 35. So you can stay another year.
Oh, God.
Thank you, though. Thank
Well,
you very
thank
much.
you. You've served the city well, and there's nothing we can do to show how truly appreciative we are. So just thank you, sir.
Well, I mean, you could give me the commission check for like selling selling
You can speak to your
Eisenhower
boss
and
about
Data
that.
Street.
All right, Brian, don't push it. I know, what a soldier, though. You've stayed on for all these things. And then, just not to belabor the minority participation, let's not forget that you mentioned Nancy Pelosi. President Biden, everyone forgets, he passed a freaking infrastructure bill. So there's a lot of projects coming our way, so it's an opportune time to get that going. And as Alderman O'Neill said to me, maybe we can learn from the county. Instead of investing so much money, maybe we can, we'll have to look at that. Anyways, so.
One more Good luck in your retirement, and use it for your retirement. You know, don't fill it up with stuff that's going to make you busier than you are while you're working. So, like we
You'll love retirement.
we did it wrong. You do yours right.
I think Brian said he wants to come back and be a alder person, so.
Learn from lessons. Learn from others' lessons. That's all I can say.
That number was.
Thank you.
That number was pretty amazing. Yeah, we've got prize, oh, you're ready. You're ready. Well, I'm not going to give Brian a pink one, so. This is Brian.
Oh, sorry, Pedro.
Ooh, sorry, that's Brian's.
Let me redeem myself.
Oh my goodness, water.
Damage, we've damaged.
Move your book.
All right, with that.
Madam Chair, I think we need to revisit our schedule, and we don't have to do it today, but we have a council meeting scheduled during MML, and we usually do not schedule meetings during MML. I think it's the 13th.
June 13th, which is also the regular approval of the budget day. Right.
So we usually change that meeting date. I'm surprised it's
Okay.
been allowed to. Alderman, we are not finished our meeting.
I'm sorry. We're still open
You're over
mic.
here having fun.
Open
We're
mic.
still working.
We'll have to wait, we'll have to wait for the city.
So, yeah, I'll
Manager.
mention to the city clerk also.
Okay, what is it, what's the practice to just move it another week?
Yeah.
Or to the following council? We'll figure it
Yeah.
out. All righty. Any other motion?
Move to adjourn. Oh, a second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, thank you.
Now you can play, Alderman.